Hey, what's up guys, my name is Abdul Nafe, and in this course we're going to be learning how to make hyper-realistic car animations inside of Unreal Engine 5. Now in this course we're going to be making two very realistic car animations. One of them is going to be in a road inside a forest, so we're going to be creating a whole forest scene, and we're going to create a road, a sort of a highway on inside a forest, and we're going to be making cinematic renders of the car. And the second scene is going to be inside a garage, in which we're going to be creating a whole garage, the inside part of the garage and the outside part of the garage as well. So we're going to be rendering the car inside and outside of it. So there's a lot to learn in this course. We're going to be covering how to import models in Unreal Engine 5. We're going to be learning how to texture cars. We're going to be learning how to create realistic environments, do realistic lighting using HDRIs or maybe the default lighting setup in Unreal Engine. And yeah, so there's really a lot to cover. Even if you are a beginner or an experienced Unreal Engine artist, I would definitely recommend you to take this course. Now, the good thing about this course is that this course is going to be, it's going to show you the raw process of me as an artist when I'm like creating art. So we're going to be making all the creative decisions. We're going to be solving all the problems together. And yeah, just generally, it's going to be a good experience for you to like learn an actual workflow for real 3D artists, right? So I would really recommend you to take this course if you want to take your Unreal Engine skills to the next level. One thing which I am going to mention is that you do need to have like very basic experience with Unreal Engine 5 and some experience with Blender 3D and Premiere Pro is going to be useful because we are going to use the basics of those softwares as well. But yeah, apart from that, that's pretty much it. I'm really excited for this course and I hope you are too. And yeah, I'll see you in the course. Alright guys, so let's go ahead and get started with the first render, which is right here. You can see this Unreal Engine project. This is the actual project in which I made this render. So this is obviously path tracing. If you want to do ray tracing, you can see that this is how it looks in ray tracing. Still looks pretty good. We can make some tweaks to make it look better in ray tracing, but I was intending to render this in path tracing only. That's why I didn't really, bother with ray tracing as much. But I will show you some tips and tricks to make ray tracing look better than this right here. But obviously the difference between path tracing and ray tracing is quite a lot. Path tracing obviously looks better. So yeah, let's go ahead and get started with this project. So I'm just going to be using this Unreal Engine project that I have opened here. You can obviously go ahead and create a new project if you want, or you can use a previous existing project and you can just create a new level in that and just keep working in that. That's what I usually like to do. I usually like to create very less projects, and then in those projects I basically like create new levels and make new projects in those new levels. So let's go ahead and create a new level. So I'm just going to go to file firstly, file. I don't think you can see that because of my recording setup. It's like above the recording bounds, but you can just see file right here and just click new level. I'm pretty sure you can see that. And just click empty level because we're going to be starting from scratch. We're going to be doing everything from scratch. And even if you are an Unreal Engine beginner, you don't know anything about Unreal Engine 5, just like the very basics, that should be more than enough for this tutorial because it's actually pretty easy and pretty straightforward. I'll show you everything that there is to learn. All right, so with that being done, what we can do is the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to create a basic lighting setup. But before that, we can go ahead and create a basic landscape. So I'm just going to click this selection mode right here, go to landscape, and then just click create right here and just go back to selection mode because we're not going to be doing any sculpting. We just need a basic landscape like that, right? So after this, we can continue to work on the lighting. So I'm just going to go to window up here. Again, you cannot see that, but I'm pretty sure you know where window is. It's basically above this point right here in Unreal Engine, and just click environment light mixer. So once you click that, you're going to have these 5 options. Just click all of them, and because that's all we're going to need for a lighting setup. It's as simple as that. We are going to be adding an HDRI though, but that's going to be later on, not right now. So just make sure if you go to your skylight, make sure your real-time capture is turned on, because if it is not, then it's not going to look good. And yeah, the shadows are going to be weird. So just make sure that is turned on, right? Now what we can do is we can actually go ahead and just import the car first. And before that, just save your project. Just click Control S on your keyboard and you can just go ahead and save this wherever you want. I'm just gonna do car underscore forest underscore course. Cool. So that's gonna be our level. And now we can just go ahead and import the car which we're gonna be working on, right? And just be sure to save everything before that. So for the car, we can just go to the internet, and we have multiple options to basically get a car. What you can do is you can just search for car 3D model on the internet. You can go to Sketchfab, and you can get a lot of different 3D models of cars here. Alternatively, what you can do is if you are familiar with Blender, which I am assuming that you know at least one 3D software. If that software is Blender, then I'm just going to open Blender just to show you. And if you know about Blender Kit, which I'm assuming you already know about Blender Kit, if you know about Blender, it's basically an add-on. You can just search for it on the internet. Blender Kit, and it's a free add-on which you can use to get free car models or free any sort of models basically. But in this situation, we are going to be using it to get car models. So you can just search car here, and you're going to see that if I go and set it to free first, you're going to see that we have a lot of car models here as well. Now, since this is not a Blender tutorial, I'm not going to go into details on how you can install this add-on. I have plenty of other Blender courses which go over this, so you can check those out if you want. But yeah, you have a lot of good options here as well. And I would actually recommend you to like get one of these cars, because these cars, you know that they're actually like good models, and the texturing and the meshes and everything is all going to be perfectly fine. But as opposed to like downloading something from the internet, you don't really know what you're like, working with and all that stuff. So you can get a good model or you can get a bad model, you don't really know. You have to like test everything out. So, but I'm just going to be downloading something from the internet just to show you how the process works. Because if you get something from Blender Kit, it's like pretty straightforward. So I'm just going to go to Sketchfab, and in fact, I'm just going to be searching for a car here. Make sure you click downloadable and make sure the category is cars and vehicles. So now you're going to see that a lot of these cars are actually stylized cars, which is not something I want. I want a more realistic car model. And I'm actually not going to be doing the same Ferrari that I did in in the preview of this course, basically, the actual scene which I created before. So instead of that, we can go with the Porsche 911. This is a pretty good car, to be honest. Also, if any model that you want to download has this $sign right here, that means it is not free. You have to pay for that. And if it has this what do you call it, this download sign right here, that means it is free. So you can just go ahead and do that. So I'm going to go to the right side, and I'm going to sort this by most liked or most viewed, doesn't really matter. But these are going to be the best models on the website. And so it's always good to like, sort by the most liked. That's what I do, at least. I mean, it's really hard to decide because there's like so many cars, so many options. But actually what I'll do is I'll just probably cut this part, and I'll just like see you guys when I have decided what model that I'm going to get. And you guys can also just feel free to like choose any 3D model that you want. And once you have decided what model you want to get, then we can just move forward with this course. All right, guys, so I ended up going with this model right here. It's a Lamborghini Huracan. And if you want this exact model, what you can do is you can just search for Huracan Black Panther on Sketchfab. And it's by, yeah, it's this model right here. And it's by this person right here, STC Performance. They make really good models, by the way. You can check their whole sort of page out, and you can see that they basically make like custom cars, like custom supercars. They have a lot of Lamborghinis and a lot of like really good cars. So they have a total of 125 models, which is like insane if you ask me. But yeah, you can use one of their models, but obviously I'll be sure to like give them credit, and because it's them who created the actual model and did all the hard work. But yeah, I love these guys. So yeah, also be sure to follow them on Sketchfab as well. So you can just download this 3D model right here. Click download 3D model, and you can go with like any of these except for USDZ, because Blender cannot open USDZ by default. And if you're wondering why we're going to be opening this in Blender first, that's what I usually like to do, just to make sure all the normals and everything is just fine. And yeah, just like to sort of make sure everything in the model is working fine before sort of exporting it again and importing it inside of Unreal Engine 5. It's just a habit that I have. You can obviously like get away with that as well. You can like skip this part and import it directly inside of Unreal Engine 5. But what I've noticed is oftentimes these models, they have I don't think SDC performance models have this problem, but like generally from Sketchfab, a lot of models have like incorrect normals. So I just like to like, import them in Blender and just make sure that they're fine first. So if I see FBX or .blend format, then I'm definitely getting that. Otherwise, my next go-to option would be GITF. So I'm just going to do that and just wait for it to download. I already did download it, so I'm just going to do it again. Just open the zip file and, oops, my bad. And just open the source folder. So they also come with textures, which you can use if you want. I personally, let me see. Yeah, I'm personally not going to use these textures. Yeah, I don't think I need to use these textures, but you can if you want to inside Unreal Engine. But all I care about right now is the FBX model. So I'm just gonna essentially copy that, basically drag that and drop it into desktop. I already do have it, so, but I'm just gonna replace it. And I was just testing this model out before, sort of like recording, just because I want to make sure everything works fine, you know. So I'm just gonna go ahead and open Blender now. So I am assuming that you know like the very basics of Blender at least. Um, so you can just go to File, Import, and then FBX, right? And after that, you can go to wherever you had that model saved and just click the model right here, import FBX, and it should take a minute, but it should eventually import. Perfect. So now you can see that our model is perfectly imported. One problem that I'm noticing right away is the fact that these tires are rotated. So I want to make sure that the tires are facing straight, just in case we want to make like an animation moving forward or anything like that. So yeah, but the problem right now is that if I rotate both of them, you're going to see, if I go to the top view and rotate both of them, you're going to see that they're actually not going to rotate properly, right? So I'm just going to undo that. And the way we can do this, the way we can go about this is basically by selecting the tires and moving them just to make sure everything is just one object, right? I want to make sure that the rims or anything, the brake disc or anything like that is not a separate object. If that is the case, what you can do is you can just select the model basically, press tab to go into edit mode, press alt and Z to go into basically X-ray mode. Alternatively, what you can do is you can press this button right here to go into edit mode. And then you can select one of the tires, right? Just select one of the tires and just press P on your keyboard, which is going to bring up a menu, which is going to say separate. And so we're going to separate this selection, right? So once you do that and you press tab to go out of edit mode, you're going to see that now you can also press alt Z, by the way, just to go out of X-ray mode. And now you're going to see that you have two objects. One of them is going to be this object separated, and the other object is going to be that tire, right? So we just separated both of the tires. Now we can just go ahead and go into X-ray mode again and just rotate them properly. Also, one problem which you're going to be noticing is that if I rotate them now, you're going to see that the center point or the pivot of the rotation is actually set to this point right here. But I want it to be the center of the tire, right? So in order to fix that, it's a pretty simple fix. You just go to Object, you go to Set Origin, and you just do Origin to Geometry. And so it's essentially going to bring it in the center of the geometry. So we can go ahead and rotate this, and yeah, and we can go to the back view just to make sure that both tires are the front and the back wheels are actually aligned. So just move them in the x-axis like that, and obviously they don't need to be like perfectly aligned, but they should be roughly aligned. Actually, I might want to move this a little inside, just a tad bit, because I think that looks better. And so now after this one is done, we can just move on to the second tire. Just go to the top view, go to Object, Set Origin, Origin to Geometry, and then rotate it like that. Just make sure both of them just eyeball both of them to make sure they both look fine, which they do. Alright, so the wheels are basically done. What we can do next is we can just click this button right here, this drop down menu right here, and click face orientation to make sure all the normals are correct, which some of them are not, unfortunately. So if you were to import the model like this in Unreal Engine 5, it would have been very weird, and the tires would have looked very bad, right? So what we're going to be doing to fix this is actually, it's a pretty simple fix. Just select the tire, press tab to go into edit mode, press A to select everything, and basically just go to mesh, normals, and then just do recalculate outside. Now if I press tab to go out of edit mode, you're going to see that everything is blue inside there. Okay, select this wheel, tab A, mesh, normals, and then recalculate outside. Tab out of edit mode, and then just do the same with the back wheels as well. Tab A, mesh, normals, and then recalculate outside. Perfect. All that is basically done. I think these parts are inside anyway, so they should be fine, hopefully. Let's go to the back. So any part which is like actually inside the car, that's perfectly fine. It can be it can be red, it's totally fine. But if it's something which is like sort of, you know, just on the outside part of the car, then that is a problem. Okay, so I think we're basically good to go. One other thing that I'm going to be doing is I'm going to go to the side view and press A to select everything, the whole car, and just press G and Z to just move it up and set it on basically the horizontal plane, right? Because I think that's just gonna make sure that if we scale it, if we scale it in Unreal Engine 5, it's just gonna scale from the bottom, right? And so next up, we can just go ahead and finally go to File, Export, and then export as FBX. Go to Desktop. I'm just gonna call this Lambo Hurricane. Oops, my bad. I don't know why it got deleted. Hurricane. I hope I'm spelling that right. Actually, no. It's just one R. I don't know. Two R's sound cool, honestly. And I have this folder with like all my cars, all the car models that I've downloaded. I like the way I said all my cars. It's like I own these cars. But anyway, so we can just go back to Unreal Engine 5. Also, just in case you don't know how to create a new project, let me just show you that workflow. It's actually pretty simple. So once you open Unreal Engine 5, I just opened a new instance of Unreal Engine. But once you open Unreal Engine 5, you can just go to Games and open a blank project. That's what I usually do, because we don't really need any of these presets or like anything from here. You could, if you want a photo studio for the car, you could use this preset, but I've never really tried it because I've never really needed to, because I create all my studios from scratch. Because I mean, that's the whole point. So yeah, I usually like to go with blank and make sure to set it to blueprint. Quality preset should be maximum. Target platform, desktop is fine. And if you have an NVIDIA RTX graphic card, then be sure to turn ray tracing on. Otherwise, you can just leave it off. Ray tracing is going to give you better results, but the difference is not that huge. So if you can't turn it on, it's perfectly fine as well. And then just name your project whatever, set the project location to whatever, and then just create the project. I'm not going to do that because I already have this project opened. But yeah, so once you have a project opened, what you can do is you can just right click the content folder, click new folder, and just call this whatever. I'm just going to call it Lambo Hurricane. Be sure to create a new folder for your car, because otherwise, because your car is going to have a lot of like meshes, a lot of materials, and you want that to be like very organized, you know? You don't want that to be like just randomly in anywhere in your project. So what I can do now is I can go to my file explorer and just browse over to where I had the car saved, the model that we just exported from Blender. So it's this model right here. What you can do is you can just drag this model inside the content browser right here. And I'm just going to minimize this. And so these options, these FBX import options, make sure that they are set to the default. We don't need to change anything. Just click import all and we should be good to go. Now it is going to take a minute to import, but I'll see you when it's done. All right, so once the import has been completed, you're going to see these, you're going to see some errors right here. We can just safely ignore all of them. And now you're going to see in our folder, we have a bunch of materials and a bunch of meshes as well, right? So to import the car into our scene, what we're going to be doing is that we're going to select the first mesh and shift select the last mesh. Meshes are all these objects, and obviously the materials are these spheres right here. So ignore the spheres, just import all the meshes like that into our scene. Perfect. So now you're going to see that our car has been imported correctly, right? And you can see that the tires look pretty good. The tires look correct because we obviously, you know, fixed our normals. So now we can, we basically have two options. Either we can sort of start creating our scene first and then texture the car. But what I usually like to do is I like to just be done with the texturing before anything else. Then we can create our scene and then we can sort of tweak our lighting, add the HDRI, and we can sort of move forward from there, right? So let's begin with the texturing of this car. So for the texturing of the car, we're going to be using an add-on basically, or like a texture pack, you can call it, which is available on the marketplace, on the Unreal Engine marketplace. So we can just search for Epic Games Launcher. Just go inside the launcher, and if you're in Unreal Engine, you can go to Marketplace, and it's actually made by Unreal Engine themselves. It's called Automotive Materials. Automotive Materials. If you just search for that, you're gonna see this thing right here, the first thing right here, Automotive Materials. This is a texture pack that we're gonna be using. So we can just click Add to Project. And if you see this problem right here, no compatible user projects found, what you can do is you can just click Show All Projects, select whichever project that you want to add it to, and then it's still gonna, the Add to Project button is still gonna be grayed out. So you can just select the highest version here. So the highest compatible version is 5.1, but then you can just Add to Project. I'm not gonna do that because I already do have this in my scene. If I can show you right here. So this folder right here is the Automotive Materials. I already do have it, but so once you add it to project, you are gonna essentially just see this folder right here. Okay, you can just open the folder, and inside this you're gonna see this materials folder right here. You can open that again to basically reveal the exterior folder and the interior folder, and you can sort of use these to essentially find materials for your car. So let's start with the car paint. So for the car paint, you have a lot of these options, and all of these materials are fully customizable, which I'm going to show you how to do that in just a second. But for example, you want like a yellow car, right? So we can just apply the material, and applying the material is as simple as just dragging and dropping. It's literally that simple. And so if you're unsure of which material to apply where, what you can do is you can just simply go back to the car model page on Sketchfab, and then you can sort of just see which material goes where. So this part should be carbon fiber. However, we applied the car paint to this, which is looking weird. So we can just go down to carbon fiber and apply this material right here. So applying materials is as simple as that. You can see that our car is already looking pretty realistic. It's looking pretty decent. And these materials are actually like really good for, this purpose. So this part is actually glass. So we're going to apply glass here. So you can just go to glass and then apply glass. And if your reflections, by the way, are not as good as mine, your reflections are actually going to be like this. If your reflections are like this and you want to make them look better, what you can do is you can just simply go to settings. You can go to engine scalability settings and make sure to set them to cinematic, and you're going to see instantly your reflections are just going to become better. Now this obviously will come with a performance cost. It's a slight performance cost, though it's not a lot, but you can just apply glass materials here as well. I would definitely recommend you to turn the quality to cinematic, at least before you're rendering. While you're editing, it doesn't really matter, but when you're rendering, you should. Okay, so that is done. Let's apply material here. Let's see which material you should be applying. So it should be something like a black metal. One other thing that you can also do is you can just search for Lamborghini. Basically just the car model that you're working with. Just like look at actual pictures of that car, and have some references, so you can sort of use those to basically just get inspiration and get to know which material you should apply where. So I'm just going to go to the metal folder, and you can apply a black metal to this. Perfect. And next up we have, also by the way, the logo is missing, so we are going to have to add that for sure. So we're going to go ahead and do that in just a bit. And so the side mirrors are also the same color as the car, so I'm just going to apply the same material. Perfect. And maybe so what about this thing right here? So let's actually look at a picture which shows the car from the back. Just open this image in new tab, and so we can sort of zoom in and see. Now this part, I think it's probably like a black metal or a hard plastic. I don't think it would be plastic though. I think it has to be metal, or maybe even carbon fiber. Let's try carbon fiber. Actually, no, it's inside there. So we're gonna have to go inside here and then apply the material like that. Actually, carbon fiber doesn't look that good. I think it's just like a metal. Probably something like this. Yeah, I think that looks pretty decent. Perfect. And the interior, I'm just gonna apply like a black leather sort of material to this. And I don't know why, for some reason, the driver's seat is just not visible, which is a weird thing. I mean, it doesn't really matter, but it's kind of weird. I think it probably has to do something with the normals, so we can probably just go back to Blender and just make sure, see how the problem was caused. Oh, actually, there is no driver's seat for some reason in this model, which is kind of weird, but it's okay. It doesn't really matter because we're not going to be able to see it from outside anyway. But we can probably go to interior and then just go to leather. Just look for a dark leather material and just apply it to the whole car. It doesn't matter which material you apply it to, because we just want like the interior of the car to like look dark from outside. We obviously don't need it to be like super accurate or anything. So that's perfectly fine. Let's apply a mirror material to this side mirror. So I'm just going to go to metal again. Actually, go to exterior and then the metal folder in the exterior folder. And you're going to see this mirror material at the end. Apply that. Now the reflections are obviously not going to be super accurate in ray tracing mode, but if you switch to, let's say, path tracing mode, you're going to see that everything is going to become super accurate. So that's just a choice that you have to make. And yeah, so go back to lit mode. And now let's start working on the tires. So for the tires, for the rims, I'm going to again use metal, use some sort of metal, probably like this metal right here. And actually, and so this is going to be a lighter metal, and let's do a darker metal on this part. We can probably do something like that. But then we also need to, what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to make this metal a little darker. The way I do that, the way I customize any of these materials is by opening them. And you're going to see inside here, we have this option called use tint. If it's not checked already, you can just check it. And the tint is set to gray, but I can always make it darker to make the material darker. Or I can make it lighter to make it lighter, you know? As simple as that. So I can just set it to something like that. And let's see if it applied the material to other tires as well. It did not. Yes, we're going to have to do that separately for all the wheels. So close this, and this goes here. This other material goes here. Let's do the same for all 4 sides. Actually, this applied it to here as well. And so the back tires are linked. Oops, my bad. It was this one for this and this one for that. So the back tires are linked, but the front tires are not for some reason. So yeah. And for the disc, we can probably do something like that. Or maybe something like that. I think that should be fine. Maybe I think it's too light. We can probably do something darker like that. I think that should be good. Same material to this as well. And this this, what do you call it, the caliper, I want that to be the same color as the car paint. So go back. Actually, let me do the calipers first. Then we can do the brake disc. I think it was this one, right? Yep. And this is the last wheel material. Perfect. So now what we can do is we can just apply material, a rubber material to the tire as well, to the rubber part of the tire. So I'm just going to go to rubber, and we can try all of these. Some of them are going to have treads, some of them are not going to have any like treads or anything like that. So I think I'm probably going to go with this one. However, I am going to make some changes to this, because right now you can see that there's like something written here, but it's like not correct. So we can try to make it correct. If it doesn't work, we'll see what to do. But so I'm just gonna reduce the size of this like that. And so we can go to UVs. And so here we can sort of using the UV tiling, we can sort of change the position of this and put the position and the scale of this this texture. So we can first try changing the scale, the position. If that doesn't work, we can probably change the scale. I think something like that should be good, because now we can't really see the text, which from far away is going to look just fine. Because remember, we're not trying to do a very detailed render of this. We're just trying to do a render from far away. So that's pretty good. Otherwise, obviously you would want to have a model which has like actual like geometry treads, which like a lot of models have those, but that's just a criteria that you're gonna have to look for if you're sort of trying to make that type of render. But yeah, before doing anything else, make sure to save all, and just click the save all button, and also make sure to press Ctrl S as well, and just so you don't lose any sort of progress. Let's work on the front lights now. So for the front lights, if I just go to the internet and just look at a picture of a Lamborghini, you can see that the lights are, if I just open this in a new tab, I can show you that the lights are like, these are the lights, and this part, the other parts are, I think, a shiny metal sort of thing, which sort of reflects light. So we can go inside the camera a little bit just so that we can penetrate through the glass which is above it. And we can go to metal, apply a metal material right there to the other part, just like that. And so for the light part, we can also go ahead and go to the lights folder and apply this here. And again, this part should also be metal, so I'm just gonna metal here. And I think it looks pretty decent. However, it does look a little weird just because maybe because the metal is not that good. See the metal. I think this metal looks a lot better. Yeah. What about something even darker? How about we do this? Yeah, I think that looks pretty good. I'm gonna go with that, yeah. Because the lights look a lot more defined now. You can obviously control the power of the lights by just double clicking the material, and then you can just increase the facing intensity or the edge intensity. I'm just gonna set it to default for now. Actually, I'm gonna increase it to something like 5, but not anything more, just because I wanna sort of make the scene first, and then I wanna tweak the lights afterwards, because that's just something I wanna do after that. And so for the backlights, what we can do is we can just apply a red lamp material to this, or maybe even a red cover. I think red lamp would look fine. Yep, that looks pretty good. And just want to see how these lights look. So they're okay. So this is not supposed to be on all the time. So I'm just gonna do a cover for this. How about I do this cover? A cover for this as well, but I'm just gonna do this cover. Or I think that's fine for now. We can obviously make tweaks later on, but I think for now that should be good enough. And I don't know why the bumper is carbon fiber for some reason, which it's not supposed to be. It's supposed to be a dark, I think, plastic, rough plastic. I think something like that should be good. And so after this, we can go ahead and add a metal texture to the exhausts. Maybe a darker one, probably something like that. Yep, that looks pretty good. And I think we're pretty much done with the texturing of the car. Just some minor tweaks here and there, but I think for the most part we're done. And I'll just apply a glass material to this part as well, just because if you want to add like your name or anything like that there, you can do that, but I'm just not going to do that. And next up, we're going to be adding a Lamborghini logo right here. So let's do that. And also we can go ahead and add a number plate, a license plate there as well at the back. I don't think there's any place to add it on the front, but we can add the logo first and then add the license plate at the back. All right, so first let's go ahead and add the logo in the front. So for that, we're just going to be going to the internet and we can just search for Lamborghini logo PNG. And make sure you download something with a transparent background, because obviously in Unreal Engine, if you add something with a transparent background, what it's going to do is that it's going to basically, if I add a cube, for example, if I go ahead and add a cube and I add a transparent material to this, basically the parts which are transparent in the actual texture, those parts of the cube are going to be invisible, right? So that's exactly what we want. But we don't actually want a cube, we want a plane. So we can just go ahead and add a plane like that, and I'm just going to bring it here, something like that. Make sure to like not deform it, because you can see that our logo essentially is not perfectly square. It is, if you can find something which is perfectly square, then that's obviously better. So let's see if this is, let's open this tab, and yeah, if you can get this, that would be better, because this is going to be there's going to be a square image, which is going to be easier to sort of tile. And let's see, is it downloading? It's about to download. But yeah, so now it's downloaded. So we can just go ahead and drag this inside of Unreal Engine. Just drop it anywhere you want. I'm just going to drop it right there. And now it's as simple as just dragging the texture on top of, what do you call it? The plane, right? And now you can see that the logo has been imported, right? So now what you can do is you can just bring it down and obviously scale it down and all that stuff. And just like basically position it such that it just looks good. I'm going to have to turn off all kinds of snappings, because we want to be really precise with this. So we'll just bring it down like that. and further. I'm gonna have to scale it down even more, just a tad bit. Something like that might be good. Rotate it. I think 33 degrees should be fine. Move it up. You can also change the units to basically, you can change the axes to the object axes. So it's gonna basically, you can move the object along its own axis. So that would make it a little easier for you. I need to rotate it a little more. Just a tad bit like that. Maybe even scale it down a little more. You have to be really precise with this. Maybe even scale it up a little bit like that. Just a tad bit, just so that it just fits. Yeah, so that just fits in perfectly, which I think it does. And yeah, perfect. So our logo is basically in place. Let's go to the back. Let's see if there's any logo there as well. Okay, so there's this Lamborghini texture, which we're gonna apply a metal material to. Let's apply a shiny, glossy metal material to this. Actually, that doesn't look good. Yeah, I think that's better. Okay. And let's add a license plate now. So for the license plate, it's actually pretty simple. Go back to the internet and just search for license plate creator. You can just look for a license plate creator. You can either you can just download a pre-made license plate, or you can like create your own license plate. I always use this Rockstar Games tool. It's basically made for GTA, but what do you call it? It's actually like you can create license plates with it. So just click try out, and you can just write whatever you want. I'm just gonna write my name, Alpha 3D. That's my Instagram handle, by the way, if you want to follow me. I post all my new artwork there. And you can just select any sort of design that you want. I'm just gonna go with, let me go with this actually this time. So once you have that, you can make sure you're on 3D, because if you're on 2D, it's not going to look that realistic. But if you're on 3D, that's perfectly fine. You can just zoom. Actually, it's not zooming in that. So what we can just do is we can simply just click print screen on our keyboard, or we can just go to search for the snipping tool, and then we can just snip this. Make sure you don't snip the edges. Like make sure you don't get any of the background in it. Make sure all of it is just number plate. So that's perfectly fine. Right click this, save as. We're going to save this on desktop, call it license plate. Perfect. So then we can go back to Unreal Engine. Actually, let me go to desktop and minimize all of this stuff. Just drag the license plate inside of Unreal Engine and just drop it. I'm just going to drop it in the content folder, the main content folder. Now what we can do is we can just simply import a shape, which is going to be a cube. And it's pretty straightforward, to be honest. Like even if you know the basics of Unreal Engine, you should be comfortable with doing all this stuff. And if you're not, by the way, you can check out my what do you call it? My Unreal Engine beginners course. I go over all the basics of Unreal Engine in that. So you can check that out if you want to work on your basics. Now what we can just do, we can just drag this on there, and you're going to see that the aspect ratio doesn't look correct now. So we can just scale it down to the point that the aspect ratio looks fine. You can go back and just eyeball it to see if it's similar to that. I think something like that. I think something like that is fine. Yeah. And scale it further, something like that. Actually, let's place it on the correct position first. Then we can sort of keep scaling it. And obviously none of this is supposed to be like, none of this is intended to be very detailed. Obviously you can see the texture on the sides, it looks a little weird, but our goal is to just make something which just looks good with the least amount of effort. Because obviously this render is going to be from like pretty far away. So we're not going to be like going up and like seeing every single detail. But yeah. I think that's a very important part of animation and like just creating things in general. Like just deciding what to sort of put your time on. and what to avoid to save time, because obviously there's a million things that you could be working on and you could be trying to improve, but um it's always good to have like priorities, like what sort of stuff you're trying to work on, what sort of stuff you're trying to just ignore. And I think we are good to go with the license plate as well. It was as simple as just creating a license plate and just placing it there. Perfect. So now what we can do is let me just close all this stuff. And I think our car is ready. Now we can move on to the next step, which is going to be creating the atmosphere. So let me actually go back to my original level, which I had, in which I created the actual scene. So I can like sort of show you the type of environment we have. Let me, one sec. Let me go inside the camera real quick. And actually, I'm just going to get out of the camera just so I can like show you better. And then I'm going to increase the exposure a little bit, something like 10, so you guys can like, see better. So now you're going to see that we basically have a few cubes which have a road material, right? Which we got from Megascans. I'm going to show you how to import that in just a bit. And then we have some rails, some guardrails, highway rails, which were also imported from Megascans. And then we have on the side, we have these meshes. So these meshes, which are essentially forest floor type stuff. And there's the same mesh, they're just like duplicated. And yeah, we're gonna do that in just a bit. And then we have a whole bunch of trees. So yeah, we're gonna import the trees from Megascans, but they're not actually imported the way you think they are imported. You have to go to Epic Games Launcher and you have to like separately import them, but we're gonna do that in just a bit. And you're gonna see that on the floor, on the ground, there are some leaves and sticks which we created using Megascans again. So let's go ahead and start working on this. And obviously you can see that there is an HDRI here, a forest HDRI. I'm going to show you how to import that and apply that as well. Okay, so let's go back to our level now. So now you have a basic overview of what we're trying to do. Let's start with the actual, what do you call it? The road itself. So let me go back to my default viewport instead of cinematic. So for the road, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to add, click here, add, go to add Quixel content. And this is how you import pretty much almost all Megascans assets. What you can do is you can either search for like road or something, or a better option would be to just hover over this home icon right here, go to surfaces and go to asphalt. Here you can like find all sorts of like asphalt and like road and all that stuff. So I would recommend you to use this method. So I think the one which I used was probably yeah, so it's probably this one, Fine American Road. If you want to download this exact texture, this exact material, then what you can do is you can just search for Fine American Road, like this exact thing, and you're gonna come up with that. Okay. You can use some other variations as well if you want, but yeah. So I'm just gonna download this. I would recommend you to do high quality or highest quality. Highest quality is obviously gonna be better. But then this I think is like, if I click download just to see the download size, you're gonna see that it's almost 1 GB for just one texture, which is honestly insane. So I'm just gonna work with high quality, but if you want to make something which is actually like really, really good, then I would recommend you highest quality. But once you've downloaded it, you can just click add. And once you click add, you're gonna see that in your content browser, it's just gonna appear like that. And you can't really directly apply this to the landscape because that's not what we're trying to do. We are just gonna go ahead and create a shape, which is gonna be a cube, and just move it here, bring it up so that it's basically like just above the landscape, like just a tad bit above, something like that. One sec, something like that should be fine. Okay, so now you can apply the material to this. You're gonna see that the road is looking pretty decent. And so for the scale, what you can do is you can either just eyeball it, or you can sort of look at some references of highways. So highway in forest, let's see what comes up with car. So I just want to look at like the scale of things, how big the highway is. You can also go to Pinterest for better inspiration photos. So if I just go here and I search for highway, car, forest, just type your keywords and it should ideally come up. So now in this you can see that the road is actually like pretty what do you call it, it's pretty narrow, so it's basically just space for one car here. And some highways are always going to be wider, but yeah, you get a general idea, right? So I'm just gonna scale it so that I'm gonna position it as well. Scale it such that it's a little larger than one car, but like generally just like one car can travel on one road. Okay. And then what you can do is you can just hold Alt on your keyboard, and you can move ahead, move this head, so it can basically like duplicate that, and just make sure you place it so that it's intersecting a little bit, but not a lot. So because you can see the part that it intersects with is going to look a little weird like that. So move it ahead, but make sure there's no gaps in between either. So make sure it's intersecting, but just a tad bit so that it's not like noticeable or anything like that. Yep, perfect. So now you can see that our road is pretty good. So it all depends on you. If you're trying to make an animation, a long animation, then you can obviously extend the road quite a lot. But my thing is, I just want to make a very simple, what do you call it, render. So I'm just gonna keep the road pretty short. And the way I selected both of those was by simply pressing and holding Shift on my keyboard, and then you can like select both of them. So yeah, bring it back. One thing which we can do with this road material, which you might be noticing, I think I already have that setting on, but you can actually increase the normal intensity. So your material might not be as bumpy or as sort of as realistic as this one. But what you can do is you can simply go to the material, just double click the material, and you can see this normal strength right here, the normal strength option right there. So by default, it looks like this. You can see it's pretty flat, but then if I increase it to something like 2, so by default it's set at 1, right? If I increase it to 2, you're gonna see that it just looks a little more bumpy, you know. Set it to 3, obviously it's gonna just keep going higher and higher. And I actually think I kind of like 3, honestly, so I'm just gonna do that. Yeah, so cross it out, and let's increase it. Let's extend the road to the back side as well. So just select this, hold the Shift, and select all these 3 and extend them back like that. Make sure that the part that is intersecting is pretty small. Perfect. So next up, what we're going to be doing is that we're going to be creating the rails. What do you call them? The barriers. And so for that, you can just search for barrier, and it should come up. Yeah, you have a lot of these options for barriers, but the one which I am going to use is, where is it? Actually, I don't find it. So what if I just write highway? Things should come up then. Yep, it's here. So you can get these, although I think actually it was that. Yeah. So you can basically get like a whole collection of things. You can like choose different styles and stuff. But I think the one which I downloaded was probably not that one. It was, let me see, should be somewhere here. Yeah, I think it was this one. Modular metal guardrail, because it's just longer and it's sort of, you can add less of these to cover the same area. So I think that's good. And I did medium quality, but this time I'm going to do, oh, actually, this is only available in medium quality. That's fine. So just add it, download it, and add it. And I want to see if the quality is not too bad. Yeah, I think it's fine. Perfect. So again, I'm going to rotate this. Let me turn on snapping this time though, because I want to rotate it exactly 90 degrees. And also you're going to see that this is way too large for our road. So I'm just going to decrease the scale. I think something like that should be enough. Yep, I think something like that should be enough. Maybe even a little smaller. I don't want it to be too small though. Yeah, that should be fine. And let's just place it over here. And so then we can essentially just hold Alt on our keyboard and then, oops, my bad. Hold Alt on our keyboard and then just move it like that. And so you can see that it actually like joins in pretty seamlessly. It actually looks like really realistic, which is pretty good. So yeah, then you can just keep duplicating these essentially until you have until you've covered the whole road. Something like that. One more time. And then select the last one and then just extend it like that, because we're not really going to be seeing the edge of the road anyway, so it doesn't really matter. And so we can select like three, oops, my bad, like three more, hold Alt, duplicate it like that, and one more time, just like that. Perfect. Now what you can do is you can go here and you can select all these metal rails, select the first one and shift select the last one, so you can see that all of them are selected. And with all of them selected, you can press Alt on your keyboard and then just duplicate them over to the other side. And then here you can basically just rotate them like that, 180 degrees, because obviously you want them to be facing the other direction. And now you can just place them correctly, just like that. Move them a little back. Yep, perfect. Let me see if they're... Yeah, perfect. So we have our guardrails in place. It looks pretty decent. Now let's start working on the forest itself. So for that, what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to go back to Unreal Bridge and just go to the top. I think I downloaded this one, Nordic Mossy Ground. So if you want to actually look for these assets, what you do is you can basically just go to collections and then go down to environment. And in environment, what you can do is you can go to natural, and here you can, so you have different options, but I think the one which I got was, you can either get something from Tundra. Tundra is a very good environment which you can use assets from for like forests and stuff. You can use something like this if you're going for a more rocky forest. But I think, what did I use? You can also use this as well. I think I used this one, which is pretty decent. So yeah, once you have an asset ready, once you have decided what type of asset you're going to use for, what do you call it, the forest ground, then what you can do is you can just download that. I'm just going to download it in high quality, add it, and then you can just start placing it on the side like that. Okay, rotate it 90 degrees. And so now it's up to you if you want to just keep it straight like that, just like aligned with the ground, like just essentially it's the forest ground is flat. Or another option that you have is you can also tilt this a little bit like that, like maybe 10 degrees, move it up, and so then your forest ground is essentially going to be sort of tilted upwards. So it's sort of like this road is sort of in a valley of sorts. So I actually prefer that. I think it looks pretty good. And don't worry about these like weird edges because the materials are not blending very well. That's perfectly fine. We're gonna fix that in just a bit. Also, you can reduce the size of this asset just a tad bit like that. And what that's gonna do is because the material is gonna become more dense, it's gonna increase the quality of the material. So I usually like to make my assets a little smaller than they are supposed to be, just to get extra quality. And I think that looks pretty decent. With that, we can go ahead and duplicate this. Press Alt on your keyboard and then just keep duplicating it. Now make sure to add a little bit of variation to this. So for example, just increase the size of this a little bit. Or let me actually go check this material to see how the normals and everything are. So normal is 1. Let me increase it to 2. Let's see the difference. My bad. Yeah, I think I kind of like do a little more. It just adds more bump to it, which is really nice. And so, oops, my bad. And so you can also tilt these and like sort of scale them up and scale them down and stuff like that. A little bit like that. And then we can just duplicate them on the other side because we don't want them to like cover the backside as well. And I'm not going to do this side either because our render is essentially going to be from this angle, so like something like this angle, and so we're really going to be seeing that background. However, obviously you can just complete the whole scene if you want, but if you're trying to make an animation, then you're gonna have to do that. Otherwise, if you're making a render, I would recommend you to just save your resources and just like um, just work on the things that are actually gonna matter. And yeah, so with this being done, we can move on to the next step, which is gonna be so we have two steps, which are next. So one step is gonna be adding the trees, and the other step is gonna be adding the grass and like the ground cover. So let's go ahead and start with those. All right, so let's work on the trees first. So for the trees, we're gonna have to close this, and we can just go to the Epic Games launcher again. And if I go to Unreal Engine, and if I go to Marketplace, we can search for yeah, we can just go ahead and search for trees. So if you just search for trees and you set the max price to free, what's going to happen is that you're going to see some asset packs from Quixel Megascans, and you can download any of these basically. So I've used the European alder trees in the past, European black alder, and I've tried some. Huh, it's the same thing, isn't it? Anyway, so yeah, you can try the European hornbeam as well. They're just different types of trees. It really depends on what you're sort of going for. And I tried these Norway maple as well. So I'm actually gonna go with these because I want to show you guys how you can sort of change the color of the trees as well, and how you can sort of get these orange trees, because it's not really super what do you call it? It's not really super intuitive for everybody when they're first trying to like learn. So I'm gonna show you how to do that as well. So you can just click any of the collections that you want. Just click download or add to project or something like that. I think it's gonna say add to project, and then show all projects. Just select your own project and then select the latest version that is compatible with that, right? And then just click add to project. Now the download is around. Let me show you how big the download is. So it is around 3.3 gigabytes. So it is going to take a while depending on how fast your internet speed is. But once it is downloaded, you're going to see a folder. You're going to see a folder in your content browser, which is going to say Norway Maple, right? So you can just open that folder. You can either go to geometry, foliage, or geometry. And so geometry is essentially if you want to actually like, what do you call it? Like place individual trees. So for example, if I want to just have a tree right there, you can see that you can import one tree like that. But if you want to use them inside the foliage mode in Unreal Engine, then you're gonna have to use these right here. Okay, you can't obviously just drag foliage objects directly into your scene like that. Okay, so what we're gonna be doing is that we're gonna click selection mode and going into foliage mode, because that's what we're gonna be using. And you're gonna see that no foliage is actually imported here. So we're actually gonna be selecting some of these trees to add. So I think one of the trees that I'm going to add is obviously going to be this one. Another one can be this one. And we can do one smaller one like that. Or maybe one other one like that as well. And in fact, what I'm going to do is that I'm actually going to be selecting all of those. And let's actually see what happens then. Because we want the forest to be as detailed as possible and as with the maximum amount of variation that we can get. And once everything is imported, just click any of them. Press Ctrl A to select all of them. And then just like check any one of them to basically check all of them, right? And now, right now, the problem that you're gonna notice if I start painting is that it's gonna be way too dense and it's gonna be like insanely dense. So that's obviously not something we want, right? So we're gonna go up and paint density. You can just set this to basically any value that you want. 0.01. I think something like that is better. Maybe it's a little too less, but let's see. Let's increase the brush size a little bit. Not that much. Something like that should be good. And I think that is pretty decent. However, one problem that I'm noticing right now is the fact that the large trees, the thick trees, I don't want that many of them. So I'm going to uncheck all of them right now and just add everything else for now. And just so we can, after everything else has been added, we can sort of get an idea of how things look. And we can add some, what do you call it? Some thicker trees on our own sort of terms. And I think this much density for the forest should be enough. And right now you're going to see that some of these are not actually all inside the ground. Some of these are just popping out. And we're going to fix that in just a bit. We're going to add foliage, which is going to cover it. And now what we can do is we can deselect all of them and just select the thick trees and just select one of the thick trees. And then you can go to single. And with this, what you can do is you can just like you can plant like single trees anywhere you want. So I'm just gonna have like one of these. Not there. Let me have one of these right there. Nope. maybe right there. I think that should be fine. Yeah, I think that looks pretty good. And apart from that, we can go back to our selection mode. I'm gonna see that our forest looks pretty decent already. Just don't look up. Obviously, it's gonna be a mess up there because it's like way too dense. But all we're concerned about is how it looks down here. And that I think looks pretty good. So let me actually go ahead and select all the Lamborghini parts and just put them inside a folder by clicking this button right here, and just call this, triple click to rename, by the way, call this Lambo. And so we can right click this selection and then select all descendants. And so essentially we can move the Lamborghini like that. Let me just place my camera here, and yeah, let's switch to path tracing just to see how it looks. And you can see that obviously path tracing is going to be looking better. You can see the reflections and everything, it just looks better as opposed to ray tracing, but the difference is honestly not that much. But yeah, there obviously is a difference. Okay, so after this, what we're going to be doing is that we're going to be adding some foliage. So let's go ahead and do that. So for that, let's go back to add Quixel content. And with this, what we're going to be doing is that we're just going to go to home, hover over home, go to 3D plants, and then you can just select any of these. You have a lot of variety in this, and I'm going to get some ferns. So I'll probably get something like this, silver glade fern, download high quality, and just let it download. Let's go back to 3D plants and let's look for ground cover. So ground cover is yeah, I'm gonna get this as well. Add this, and whenever you add something, you can add it to your foliage as well. So what I'm gonna do is I'm actually gonna be importing all of these. I'm gonna make sure everything in here is disabled, which is already in there, and then I'm gonna add all these, select all of them and add them like that. And they are gonna be checked by default, but just in case they're not, you can like check them by yourself as well. And with all this, I can actually go back to the fern and add this as well. And so just select all of these, import them in the foliage option. And these are not checked by default for some reason. So I'm just going to select all of them and just check them on, turn them on like that. And now if I go to paint, you're going to see that it's actually going to paint all these plants on the ground. But right now I want some sort of like simple grass as well, just to sort of, you know, make it more dense and all that stuff. So I can just search for grass. Just like a ground cover grass type stuff. Something like that might do. Or I'm actually going to try that, because I've never tried this grass before. Just download high quality and add it. So for this, we are obviously going to have to increase the paint density as well, because obviously we want a lot of grass to sort of cover the whole forest. And just add it like that. Select all of it and drop it in the foliage option. Make sure it's turned on. It is. And now we can start to paint. Let's see. And okay, so we're noticing a couple of problems here. First problem is that the size of these plants is absolutely insane. And the second problem is that our brush size is actually pretty big. You can also use your bracket keys, by the way, to like make the brush smaller or larger. So what I'm going to do with all of these selected, let me actually select them first. So I'm going to select the first one, go to the end, shift select the last one. And so the scale X and Y, we're going to reduce this obviously. So we can set the minimum to 0.1 and the maximum to maybe 0.3, because we do want some variation as well. And actually it's a little too small. So I set the maximum to maybe 0.5. Let's see what the problem is. So now the problem is, actually let me just set it to 0.3. I think the problem is not this, problem is the density is too low. So increase the paint density to something like 0.5. Let's see. Still pretty low, so set it to 1, see how it looks. I think it looks pretty decent. However, the density is still pretty low. So what we can do is we can't really go above 1 in that. So we're going to go down and set the density per 1 KUU. Set this to something like 300. It's going to increase it 3 times basically. And now you can see that it's actually pretty dense, which is pretty good. Perfect. So just start to paint now. And now you can see our forest is looking pretty dense. And you can also reduce your brush size and paint some in the middle if you want. And make sure to sort of have some plants which are uh, basically coming on the road itself. Because you know, if you look at an actual forest, some plants are sort of just like, you know, out on the road as well, which is just gonna sort of increase that sort of realism. Cool. And this plant I'm gonna remove. So let's go to erase, reduce your brush size, and just erase this part because that's like too far out in the on the road, which is pretty unrealistic. Some of these plants as well. Just clean up some stuff. But you can sort of have it a little out on the ground, out on the road. And yeah, I think it looks pretty decent. This is how it looks in ray tracing. If I switch to path tracing, hopefully it is going to look better. Okay, so with the path tracing, actually one problem that I'm noticing right now is the grass is not looking the best. I don't really know if I like this grass or not. So I'm actually going to remove it actually. Let me go back to my foliage mode and let's select all this grass, and basically just delete it. So it's going to remove all the grass items. And I think it looks much better without the grass, to be honest. Let's go back to our lit mode. And I think, yeah, I'm just going to paint a lot of these ferns and all that stuff. It's my bad. I'm in the erase mode still. But I'm just going to paint a lot of this stuff. So no grass for us. Basically just, what do you call it? Just the ferns and I don't know what these are called. But yeah. So right now, one problem which we're noticing is the fact that some plants are being planted on the actual guardrail, which is not something we want. So I'm just gonna erase some of those. You can have like some which are sort of like, you know, just like on top of the guardrail, but obviously nothing grows on the guardrail, right? So we don't want them to be. So something like this, maybe this is probably fine because it looks as if it's just sort of like, you know, just, it's on the guardrail, but it's not really, you know, growing on top of it. And one problem which I just noticed was that our logo and our license plate, we left them behind. So let me get those, and so let's select both of those and just drag them inside the Lambo collection as well, and just move them ahead like that. Make sure you're in the global axes, and just line them up like that. A little back. We can press shift on our keyboard to make minor adjustments, and that should be fine. Perfect. So I think our forest is looking pretty decent. We can go ahead and now maybe start working on what do you call it? Some of the leaves which are going to be on the ground, and I think otherwise it looks pretty decent. And switch to path tracing, it just looks better. But yeah, ray tracing looks pretty decent as well. All right, so similarly for the leaves on the ground, the process is pretty similar. We can just search for leaves, and oops, my bad. Just search for leaves, and so it took me a while to find the asset that I actually want to use. I think it was, I don't really remember what it was called. But I can just go to my library and show you guys the asset. But yeah, some things are like pretty hard to find in Megascans. Like you can find these decals and all that stuff. And let me actually show you how to add these as well. But they don't really look that good, to be honest. Like let me just download one and just show you guys how they work. We actually want like real geometry, you know, to sort of make it look more realistic and give it that real effect. But these decals, let me just add one of these. Okay, so if I just add these to the ground, you're gonna see that obviously right now the scale is too big, but even if I reduce it, my bad, after reducing these two axes, you're gonna see that it looks fine. If I press G to go into game mode, it looks, I mean, Yeah, it really doesn't look good. If you're looking at it from like the top, maybe then it looks fine. But really, if you're looking at it from the side, there's no depth, and yeah, so that's not good. You can also increase the normal intensity. That's going to make it look slightly better, but still, something like for it, you can see it looks, the depth is a little more, but again, it really doesn't like look that good. We actually need real geometry for it to like look realistic. So let me just go to my library and I can show you the asset that I got. Yeah, so it was this one, dead leaves. Yeah, you're gonna search for dead leaves, dead leaves, and let me actually search it on entire megascans so I can show you the other variations as well. I think there were multiple variations. All right, so when you search for dead leaves, this is what comes up. But if you go down, you are gonna have to go down quite a bit. And again, all these decals, they don't really look that realistic in my opinion, but you can like feel free to use them if you want. Um, yeah, I don't know why they're trying to hide it so much, but yeah, I still can't find it. It's crazy. Yeah, so there you go. This thing right here, dead leaves. This is what we're gonna be using, and you can see some other variations as well. I found some other variations. What is this? Oh, this is a decal as well. Never mind. You could add some decals as well if you want, but yeah. So these are some other variations as well. If you want to add these, and you can add something like this as well. But yeah, so that's what I'm gonna be doing. So let me just go ahead and add the dead leaves that I want. These ones, high quality is pretty important for this because these are going to be very visible in our scene, so we want them to be really good quality. And let's go to foliage, and me select everything, Control A, and then just check them and then uncheck them to make sure everything is deselected. And then we can go down, scroll down, and add all of these three into the foliage. Perfect. And just wait for them. My bad. Make sure that they're selected, and you can like start to paint them. Go to paint, start to paint them, but right now you're going to see two problems. First problem is that the leaves are pretty big, and so to fix that, we're just going to be selecting all of these. And so 0.3 minimum and maximum, let's set it to 0.6. Let's see how it looks. Still pretty big. So 0.2 and 0.4. Let's see how that looks. Yeah, I think this size is pretty decent, and with this you can obviously see that there's actual like depth in this, which makes it look pretty good. One problem which I think I'm noticing right now, let me see. So if I paint them here, is it the same as painting them on this? Because I feel like I think they're intersecting a little bit with the, what do you call it, with the road right there. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go ahead and go to selection mode and just like delete your landscape, because we don't really need that anymore. We needed that for, what do you call it? I'm just going to delete it. We don't really need that anymore. We needed it for, what do you call it? Just to like have sort of like a starting point. But then now, since we're done with that, we can just go ahead and delete it. But yeah, so foliage, let's paint it right here. And yeah, I think it looks pretty decent. One other thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to add some sticks as well. Some sticks. So this is a dead tree branches I'm going to be using. Just add this as well, because we obviously want some type of variation as well, right? Add this. Paint it to see the size. Size is pretty huge. So I'm going to select the branch. Oops, my bad. Go down to the size. Let's make it 0.3, 0.2 to maybe 0.3. Let's see how it looks now. I don't see any. Yeah, there's a stick right there, and I think the size is pretty good. You can also add some rocks if you want. So Nordic beach rock, we can probably do this. Let's add this just to see how big it is. It's pretty big, so we are gonna have to reduce the size of this as well. But let me just add this like that and select the rock. 0.2 to 0.4 should be fine. Let's try to paint it now, and let's see how the whole mix looks. Yeah, I think it looks pretty decent. I think the rocks are still pretty big, so 0.1, 0.1 to 0.2. That should be good enough. Yeah, I think we're good. So now we can just basically, I think I undid that. Cool. So now we can just go ahead and paint the ground with this. Now be sure to not overdo this, because if there's like too many, what do you call it? Reduce the size. If there's too many leaves and rocks and stuff like that, it's gonna look a little unrealistic. But yeah, make sure to not paint over your car, because that's gonna look weird. So let me actually go back to my selection mode first. Select the car. So just select the Lamborghini and then move it back. Move it back there. And then you can go to foliage mode, paint all the ground, something like that. Let's see how it looks. I think it looks pretty decent. Maybe like some more right there. Again, you want this to be really natural and really, what do you call it, random, which I think it is. It looks pretty decent. So now we can just go ahead and go to selection mode, select the Lamborghini again, and then just bring it forward like that. And so our camera angle is going to be something like that. So I'm trying to look for like a good background. So some parts there in the background are not covered properly. So I'm actually going to be moving the car a little more towards this side, so we can like have, so the background can be this part, which is like filled pretty evenly. Perfect. So I think our scene is pretty much done for the most part. With just one problem, one thing, not a problem, but just one thing that I want to do is I want to add some foliage right here, some dead leaves and stuff, because that part was empty. And yeah, I think we're looking pretty good. Now we can go ahead and work on, let me just see how it looks in path tracing. Oh, it looks so much better. Now let's go ahead and work on the lighting now. So let me go back to lit and let's go ahead and work on the lighting, right? So for that, we're going to be needing an HDRI. So first thing you want to do is you want to go to settings, you want to go to plugins, and then just search for HDRI and HDRI backdrop. Make sure this is checked. It's not going to be checked by default, I think, but you can just go ahead and check this. You are going to need to restart Unreal Engine. And after that, what you can do is you can just go to add and just search for HDRI. And you have this thing called HDRI backdrop. You can just drag this in like that. It's going to make everything look super bad. You can just move it a little down, just a tad bit like that, just so you can sort of, and just so it's not visible. But you're going to see that we have this background now. But right now it's really not lighting anything. And that's not what we want, right? We want it to light stuff. So for that, what you want to do is you want to go to the size. Just make sure to increase it something like 1000 or 10,000 maybe. So the bigger, you just need to be, I think you need it to be like bigger than 500 or something like that. So as long as it's that, setting it to 5000 is more than enough. But yeah, now you can see that it's actually lighting your whole scene. You can move it if you want, like it's going to change the reflections a little bit, but I mean, you can do that if you want. So now if I just go to my HDRI backdrop, you're going to see that we have this cube map thing in which we have an HDRI. If I just double click that to open it, you're going to see that this is the default HDRI that you get with this app plugin. But obviously we don't want this because there's not enough trees in it. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to be going to the internet and we can download a custom HDRI. So just search for HDRI. And there's this website called polyhaven.com. You can just go to this website, and this is the website which I always recommend because they have like amazing free HDRIs. And I'm just going to search for something like forest. You can choose any one of these. I like this one, Rainforest Trail. And so basically for the quality, the higher the quality, the better it is going to look. But I think 24K is a little too much because it's like 1 gigabyte for just one HDRI. I think 16K should be fine for me. Make sure to download it in HDR format because Unreal Engine cannot open EXR, and just click download. Now I already do have this downloaded, so you can just drag it inside of your content browser and just drop it anywhere here, right? I already have it imported, because this is the exact one that I used in the previous scene as well. So I already have that installed, and I'm just gonna open it just to show you guys. But now because this is 16K, it is taking a long time. So now you're gonna see that this is the HDRI. It's pretty high quality, and yeah. So once you have an HDRI ready, what you can do is you can go to the HDRI backdrop and just drag the HDRI into the cube map section, and you're gonna see that our HDRI has been changed. Perfect. One other thing that we want to do just to enhance this effect is basically we want to go to, what do you call it? Our skylight, and just turn off real-time capture for now. Go to source type and set this to SLS specified cube map. And then you can just drag your HDRI in this as well. And then turn on real-time capture. So what this is going to do is that it's just going to enhance your indirect lighting and your reflections and all that stuff. And it's just going to make it look a little more realistic. So, I mean, if we have an option which can make it look a little more realistic, we're obviously going to take that, right? So, perfect. Now we can go ahead and work on, what do you call it? The camera. Let's add the camera and then work on the lighting. Work on basically improving the lighting and making it look more realistic. So let's go to add. Let's add cinematic and cine camera actor. Just add that right like that. Right click this, pilot the cine camera actor, and then you can move it to wherever you want to move it to. I think I'm going to set it somewhere there. I think that should be a good frame for my scene. I'm going to have to add some dead leaves right here as well. So let me just go ahead and do that. Foliage. Let's add some here as well, just so it doesn't feel fake. Perfect. So with that, you can see that our focus is not correct. So I'm just going to select the camera, go down to the focus settings. It might not be expanded like this, but you can expand it. And then the focus method, manual is fine. And then you can just change this value to essentially just set it correct to the car's exact position. I think something like that should be good. One thing which I'm going to do is I'm actually going to be moving, right click and select all descendants of the car, moving a little towards this side and a little ahead as well. Something like that, just so the car is sort of closer to the camera a little bit, because I think previously it was too far. And select cine camera actor, change the focus again to make sure it is just in focus. You can also increase the size of this just so we can see better. Perfect. So I think it looks pretty decent. Obviously right now you can see that the camera is, everything in the scene is basically too bright. So we're going to go to add. Let's add a post-process volume. So just search for post-process volume and just move it down, move it out of your scene just so it doesn't interfere. Search for infinite extent unbound. You know what this does? It basically just makes sure that the effect is applied to the whole scene. And just go to exposure then, and then turn these two options on. So metering mode should be manual, and the exposure compensation, we can just change this to, this is essentially our brightness slider. So I'm just going to set it to something like 10, maybe set it to 11 for now. Yeah, I think 11 is fine. And then we can sort of go to path tracing and just see how it looks. So you can see right now it looks a little weird. With the HDRI, you can see that it's not really visible. Alright, so the HDRI not being visible was actually unexpected. I didn't really expect that to happen. But what I just did was I just restarted Unreal Engine and it just like worked. I think it wasn't loading correctly in the memory, so I think that was a problem. And yeah, you can just restart Unreal Engine if you face the same problem as well. Okay, so I think this is looking pretty decent. We need to work with the lighting a little bit. So the way we can work with lighting is basically we can just take the directional light and we can sort of like, you know, just move it to different positions and just see what looks good. Make sure you don't set the sun like directly at the car like that, because I think that looks absolutely trash. I would recommend you to do sort of like a lighting setup in which there's obviously, you know, some lighting which is coming through the trees. I think something like this might look good, but then the car is too dark. But yeah, so you should do something like that. Maybe I might actually do something like this. Maybe you can turn off snapping to get more control. You can also change the position of the light like that. Yeah, I think that looks pretty good. Yep, I'm gonna go with something like that. So obviously because the car is inside, I think that should be a good lighting setup. So obviously because the car is inside, oops, my bad. Because the car is inside a forest, you expect it to be more, you know, you expect the lighting to be covered by, what do you call it? You expect the light to sort of come through the trees, which is happening in this situation, which I think looks pretty good. I'm gonna rotate the car a little bit though. because I think it looks too straight. Like it's just like too perfect, sort of, if that makes sense. I think that's a better thing. You can also press G on your keyboard to get rid of all the widgets and everything, just so you can see better. I think it looks pretty good. What you can do is you can probably increase the exposure a little bit to something like maybe 12. 12 might be a little too much. I think actually 12 is good. Maybe 11.5. Yeah. And another thing you can do is you can go down in the post-process volume. You can go down to color grading, global, and then just increase the contrast to something like 1.2. I think 1.2 might be a little too much in this situation, but 1.1 should be probably good. Yeah. And yeah, I think it looks really realistic. The car looks pretty good. And you can also go ahead and sort of modify the color to your own liking. Let me just open the material so we can edit it. Just open this, double click the material to open it. And you can change the base color. Maybe make it white, something like that. I'm just gonna undo that and set it back to orange or yellow, whatever. Oh yeah, one thing which I said I'll show you guys, but I forgot to do that before. That was I need to show you guys how to change the weather and sort of change the season of the trees, so you can get like a more yellowish vibe. So the way you do that is by going to your content browser, and you go down to this folder called MS Presets. You open that folder, then you go down to ms_foliage_material, and then inside this folder you're going to have this folder called global foliage actor. Open that, and then you're going to see this blueprint thing right here. Just drag that into your scene like that, and just like move it back, like move it down or something, just so that it doesn't interfere with your scene. Something like that should be good. And then you can use this thing to basically control the season and everything like that, right? So if you just click this and go down to your details panel, you're going to see a lot of these things. You can control the wind, you can control the season. So let me actually do increase the season strength. So the more you increase this, the more that your trees are going to become yellowy, sort of. I think something like that looks really good. But in order for this to like look realistic, you also want to have a background which has those an HDRI which has those sort of trees, right? Because right now some trees are obviously orange, some trees are green, which looks pretty bad. So I'm just gonna undo this, but you get the idea. I just wanted to show you this quick little tip which you can use to sort of change the seasons and everything. And you can also change the saturation, the brightness, the health and everything. If you reduce the health, they're going to become like very, what do you call that? They're gonna become very unhealthy. But yeah, you get the point, right? So that's that. And yeah, you get a lot of different options in this. You can play around with these. You get variation tiling and all that stuff. So yeah, I'll leave that up to you guys to experiment with and just sort of like test out. But yeah, I think we are looking pretty decent. I think we're essentially just ready to go. One thing which I might do is I might go to my camera, go down to the current focal length, and just increase it to something like 40. Just like zoom in a little more, and I think that's gonna look better. So yeah, press G to go into game mode, just so we can see better. Yeah, so this is how our scene looks. Let me actually let me pull up the render which was our inspiration in the start, so we can sort of compare it. So this is what our inspiration was, and this is what we ended up making. I think our current render looks honestly better. But if you want something like this, you can also like make some modifications and like basically change the direction of the light and sort of like the brightness of the light and the position of the light. You can change it to something which gives you more of a diffused look. You can also, another thing you can do is if you don't want this sunny look, if you want like an overcast look, what you can do is you can just go to your sky atmosphere, right? And then you can increase this thing called my scattering scale. If you increase that, you're going to see that it's going to become more sort of like a overcast type situation. And after this, you can change the position of your direction light as well. And so I think this would be more similar to what we had in the original render. So you can do something like this as well if you want. But I personally think in this specific scene, I might add a little bit of it, but like not a lot. So sky atmosphere, my scattering scale, just increase it a tad bit. Something like that, right? Press G to go into game mode. Just don't overdo it. That's very important. And then I might also increase the exposure to 12 again. And while we're at this, we can also go ahead and change the bloom method instead of standard. I always set it to convolution because I think that looks more realistic. And just increase the intensity a little bit, just a tad bit, not a lot. And yeah, I think that looks pretty good. This is how it looks in path tracing. This is how it looks in lit mode. Obviously, path tracing is better. But let me actually show you a trick which you can use to make your lit render look more lit, more realistic. So one thing you can do is you can just go to your direction light or your main sunlight, whatever. And then you can go down to this thing called indirect lighting intensity. Just increase that to something like 4, and it's just gonna light up more parts of your scene, which is going to make it look closer to your path tracing render, and that in my opinion makes it look better. Another thing that you can also do to make it look better is you can go to your exponential height fog, turn on volumetric fog, and it's just going to give it like more of that realistic look. And then you can also control the amount of fog that you want. I would actually increase it to 0.05. And this is obviously going to make your path tracing render look more realistic as well. So I personally think this render looks much, much better, path tracing. And I would actually recommend you to export it like this as well, right? So I think we're pretty much done with our render. Just increase the size of your viewport and let it render. It's the loading bar, the rendering bar is down there, but it's blurred because of the depth of field. If you look at the glass parts here, they look pretty bad, right? So one way to fix that is basically to go inside your process volume, go down to go down to your path tracing settings and make sure to turn reference depth of field on. So you can see the difference is day and night. This is before. You can see that everything was super dark, not super dark, super blur, and after that it's super clear, the reflections and everything. And you can turn on emissive materials as well. It doesn't really do much right now, but in some situations it's gonna give you some better results. And yeah, that should be it. And yeah, that's essentially for this one. I will go ahead and render this now. Press G. And once this bar has been completed, what you can do is you can basically just click these 3 lines right here, click high resolution screenshot, and then just click capture. Don't do anything and then just click capture. But I'll do that once the rendering has been completed. This bar down here needs to be completed first. So once your rendering has been completed, you can just click these 3 lines right here, go down to high resolution screenshot, and then just click capture. And if you click this thing right here at the bottom, you can see all the screenshots that you have taken so far. So I'm just gonna refresh this real quick, then you can see the new screenshot is just gonna appear, right? So I think it looks pretty good. You can also do some post processing. You can edit this photo. You can maybe increase the vibrance, you can increase the sharpness and contrast and everything like that. Actually, I might do that. I might increase the contrast a little more because I think I can now. So let me just go to my post process volume, go up to contrast and just increase the 1.2. I think that looks a little better. So yeah, that's just something you can do. And yeah, once you have rendered it, you can just do whatever you want, post on social media. If you do post on social media, please be sure to tag me at Nafay3D, Nafay 3D. That is my Instagram account. But yeah, thanks for watching this, and I'll see you in the next one. Goodbye. All right, guys. So next up, we have this render right here. So we're going to be making a scene with the same car that we just used. And we're just going to be creating like a garage type scene. And as a bonus, what we're going to be doing is that we're also going to be building the inside part of the garage as well. So if I just lift this up like that, now in this specific render, if I just get out of my camera and I go back to lit mode just to like show you guys, and yeah, you can also see the difference between lit mode and path tracing. So this is lit mode, this is path tracing. So obviously there is a little bit of difference, but I think in this scene the difference is much less than the last one. And you can see that we have added some details to the garage as well, but right now it's pretty empty. But we are actually going to be sort of populating it, and we're going to be making a better garage than this, because this is just like a sample that I wanted to show you like before starting it out. And yeah, we're going to be adding lights and everything. So yeah, that's what we're going to be doing. And so the garage, we have a few options actually. We can actually get a 3D model, which I did in this scenario. But I was thinking, actually, let me just show you the 3D model first. So if I just go to Sketchfab and just go to sketchfab.com, and here you can search for garage and just make sure you click downloadable, and you're going to find a lot of options. Some of them are going to be free, some of them are going to be paid. I'm looking for something which is free. Let me see, let me look for the one which I used. Actually, I'll find that and then I'll see you guys. All right, so the garage that I used was this one, small modern garage. And so you can use something like this, or you can just model this from scratch in Unreal Engine. It's actually pretty simple. And I was thinking of actually like showing you guys how to model something like this, because it's very simple. It's just a bunch of cubes, and Yeah, so we're actually gonna go ahead and do that. So let's go back to Unreal Engine. We're actually gonna be using this as reference. So I still do want to give credit to Wardster, which is this guy right here. So you can check his other models out. Actually, yeah, actually these other models are pretty good as well. So you can like choose any one of these if you want as well. But yeah, obviously the idea is actually his, so I want to give him credit. But we're gonna be building something similar by ourselves. So let's go back to Unreal Engine and let's actually create a new level. So this is the same project, by the way, which I was using for the previous render. It's just a new level that I created for this scene. So again, I'm going to go to File, New Level, and then we can just create an empty level. Just create that. Save selected, and now we can go back to Window, Environment Light Mixer, and just create the basic lighting setup. This we did in the previous render, render as well. So you should already know how to do this. Also save the level. So I'm just going to call this car underscore garage underscore, my bad, I can't even type, underscore course. Okay, so let me get out of my cinematic viewport and just go to the default viewport so that we lose those bars. And okay, what I want to do first is I want to create a landscape just so we have, you know, a floor, a ground that we're working on. So yeah, and actually let me go ahead and import my car as well. So now again, if you want to have like a separate, like a different car, you can definitely do that. But I'm just going to be using the same car that we used for the previous scene. So I'm just going to open that previous level. And so for this level, yeah, so I'm just going to be getting the car, and so I'm just going to select the Lambo, right click it, select all descendants, and with everything selected I can just press Ctrl C on my keyboard and go back to the new the new level. Click anywhere in your viewport, press Ctrl V, and it's going to appear somewhere here. Perfect. So our car has been imported, and yeah, we just copied over the same model because I don't want to waste you guys' time just importing a brand new car and then just like texturing it all over again when you actually know that the process is basically the same. So yeah, so let's start with building the scene. So I'm just gonna start off with a cube. Just move the cube up, and actually I'm gonna be turning on location snapping for this because I want the cubes to be yeah, it's just gonna make it easier for me to model it. And let me scale it down, and actually let me turn on scaling scale snapping too. And so this thickness should be fine. And actually I do want it to be a little less thick, tad bit, something like that should be fine. And then I want this to be much bigger in these axes, obviously, like that, right? So move it here. Let's go back to our reference, and actually let me just build out sort of the basic shape of the garage, and then we can work on the front door and everything. And let me turn on the rotation snapping. Let me turn on all snappings just because yeah, we do need all snappings. So let me actually create the garage around this car so I know the dimensions of that I actually need. Because yeah, also make sure that your walls are actually just a square. Even if they're going under your landscape, that's perfectly fine, but make sure you make them, you keep them a square, and you don't like change the aspect ratio, because then the textures are going to look weird, and that's not something we want, right? I'm going to press Alt on my keyboard and then duplicate it like that. So I think something like this big of a garage should be fine. Yeah, hold Alt again and move it like that. Rotate this 90 and then bring it back. Place it right there. Make sure it looks good. Perfect. And actually, let me scale this up a tad bit, just so that we can sort of make sure that it is actually like filling in the whole space. And then we can move it down just like that. It doesn't need to be exactly the same level. It's perfectly fine, because like these minor details, they won't matter in like the big in the animation that we're gonna make, or the renders that we're gonna make. So yeah, you can just place the roof right there, move it a little back, or you can have it coming out a little bit if you want, but that's just up to you. Okay, so now in the front, we basically have to have one sort of garage door. And so one thing that you might notice right now is that there's this thing, this brick, sort of this extra layer of bricks, which is going throughout the whole garage. So I'm going to do that first. So let me just select one of these, duplicate them by holding Alt like that. And then you can just move it down like that. And I think it's too thick. So let me, or is it? I think it's fine actually. Yeah, I personally think it's fine. Yeah. So that's exactly what we want. And then just do the same with the others as well. So just duplicate it, move one notch back, and then just take it down like that. And we don't need to worry about this because this is not going to be visible in the scene anyway. But yeah. So my personal philosophy when it comes to making art and all this stuff is that you shouldn't waste any time. I mean, at least that's for me. You can obviously choose to differ if you want, but my personal thing is that you shouldn't be wasting time on anything which is not going to be visible in the final scene. uh I think that's just the most efficient way to sort of go about it, and that's what I personally do. But I mean, obviously some people are perfectionists, but I don't think I am a perfectionist myself, because I just think it takes a lot of time and energy, and you have to like work on a lot of things which sort of don't matter in the bigger picture. So that's why I like to sort of, just like so I like to put an effort where it's actually going to be visible, and where it actually matters. And so I'm just gonna actually, let me place it ahead because we obviously do want this thing ahead, right? So let me move it down like that, or let me turn on snapping again. Move it. Ooh, actually, it's not snapping to the correct area. Let me move it right here, something like that. And so it's just a matter of sort of just um, placing different cubes in different positions, and essentially you're gonna sort of figure it out. Press and hold Alt on your keyboard, and then move this back like that. And then you can sort of just duplicate it once more and just place it like there. And so you can see that that looks fine. Don't worry about intersecting meshes. It's perfectly fine. It won't really matter. And even if we do have some like texture issues, we'll fix them later. But for now, we're good. And so let me just duplicate this like that. And the reason why I'm not scaling these in, like I could have just done something like this. But the reason why I don't want to do that is because I don't want to ruin the textures. I want the textures to be just fine. So that's why I'm sort of, I just want to keep it all squares. And just duplicate it like that. And so I'm actually going to just move this part a little here just so you can like sort of, I don't want to have a whole separate cube just for that. And so you can just duplicate this and move it right here. Something like that. But then we're also going to have to move this. Actually, not this. Actually, I think I might need to add another cube. Something like that. Perfect. So our garage is essentially ready from the front. Obviously, it doesn't look perfect from the back. It's pretty rough. But we're perfectly fine with that because we don't really care. Because it's not going to be visible in our scene. So yeah, that's perfect. And now we can just add one sort of big mesh which we can just place here. And this one mesh we are fine with sort of scaling it in different aspect ratios because it's just going to be one material and it's easy to sort of just change the dimensions for that one material. If you don't understand what I'm saying, it's perfectly fine. You will when I show you an example, but yeah, just for now, just feel free to like change the dimensions of this without having to worry about keeping the aspect ratio same. But make sure it covers the whole thing. And perfect. Make sure to leave a little bit of gap in the, actually that just depends on you. If you want to leave a little bit of gap in the middle, that's fine as well, but or actually I might have to move it a little back, something like that. Yeah, I think that looks pretty good. And then we can maybe scale it up a tad bit just to make sure it's like intersecting with the edges and it's not looking weird. All right, perfect. So that's going to be the basic shape of our garage. It is obviously more simple than this. Again, you can also download this if you want, but I think we're good with this. And so we can basically just move this up like that. And then the car is going to be inside, and the garage, the inside part of the garage, we're also going to be creating that. Okay, so let's undo that and let's work on the textures of this garage now. So for that, we're simply going to go to add quickscale content, and we're just going to be using the Megascans assets, Megascans materials that come with Unreal Engine. So you can just hover over home, hover over surfaces, and then click that, and then we can just look for maybe concrete, or actually let me just get a concrete material right now for the floor, for the ground, because obviously that's very important as well. So if I just do something like a concrete pavement, that would be nice. Alternatively, I could do something like this as well. Again, it really depends on what sort of look you're going for. If you want something more dirty, you can go for that. If you want something more clean, that is also an option for you. I might actually just go with this because I think this looks pretty good. I'm just gonna download. Let me see how big the highest quality material is. It's just 400 MB. I'm gonna download that because it's gonna be the main material, which is gonna be in focus. So I want it to be very high quality. And just add it like that. And then, so the way you apply a material to the landscape is simply by selecting the landscape, going to your details tab, going down to landscape material, and then you can just drag this in. Which one is, yeah, we want the 8K one because I had the medium quality one imported as well. So just drag the landscape material in, and you can see that it looks pretty good. Yeah, the resolution is top notch. But one problem that I'm noticing is that the scale of this material is too high. And I'm actually going to be bringing out the car. Select the car and bring it out, just so we can have some perspective, some idea of what sort of scale that what sort of scale we're working with. So I'm just going to open the material by double clicking it, and then we can go to tiling/offset. Just make sure to check that on. Just turn that on. And so the higher the number that you set for the tiling X and Y, the smaller your texture is going to be. So let's start with something like 2 and 2. And I think that should be fine. So something like 2 and 2 should be fine. However, yeah, I think I'm just going to go with that. And also you can change the normal strength. So I'm just going to set it to something like 3. Actually, 2 should be enough because 3 is a little too much. But yeah, now you can see it's a lot more bumpy and it feels more realistic in my opinion. So I'm going to go with that. And now let's move on to the materials for this garage. So let's actually go back to Sketchfab and let's see what materials they had applied. So they have like a brick texture. We can maybe look for bricks if we can find something on here. Brick. Yeah, so there is a brick wall texture. We can try these. I don't really know if they'll look good or not though. Let me try. I want something which is like not too rough, you know? Not too... Let's actually go with that. Let's try this. Just download this, and this is 400 MB as well. So once it's downloaded, I can just add it and just drag and drop it like that. And obviously the size is way too big, but we can select it and reduce the tiling to something like 3 by 3. And still it sort of looks a little stretched for some reason. So I'm going to be increasing the tiling Y, something like that. I think that looks better, but it's too small now. So if I set it to 3 by 6, I think that's nice. Yeah, so I think it's we have to set tiling Y 2 times as much as tiling X to make it look good, I think. I'm not sure why. Maybe we did a mistake in sort of moving them. Yeah, I think that looks pretty decent. And yeah, it looks pretty good. So we're just gonna go with that for now. We can obviously change these materials later on if you feel like it, but yeah. And you can apply it to the back as well, but it doesn't really matter. And yeah. So now the scale for the back ones is also big, but we don't really care about that because we just care about how it looks from the front. And yeah. And next up, what we can do is we can close this out. We can go to bridge, and now we can search for actually the material for the gate. What I did was I went to surfaces, and then I went down to metal, and in metal you have this thing called corrugated. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that right or not, but corrugated metal. So I think it was this one, corrugated metal sheet. So I'm just going to download this in high quality. It's already downloaded, so I'm just going to add that, and we can apply it to this. So we can see that the scale is very tiny, which is something we are going to have to change. So maybe set it to something like 10 by 10. And then you can see that it's also rotated. So we're just going to have to set the rotation back to 0. And yeah, you can see that looks pretty decent. Or if you think that's too small, you can even change the size. But I personally think it looks just fine. Yeah, it's perfect. And for the wall, let's go back to Sketchfab and let's see how the wall looks. So the wall is still, I don't know, it's something like bricks or something. But I want to do like a, we can probably look for something like a cement material type. Let's look for something. We can even do concrete or plaster. Let's look for some plaster. I think this is gonna make it look too old. So how about tiles? Stone. I think I might just want to do like a different type of bricks. Something like that. I don't know. Again, it's all about trial and error. Let's try this actually. It's all about trial and error. You just have to like try out different things and see what looks good and what doesn't. It's very rare that you're gonna find something which looks good in the first try. You're always gonna have to download like many materials before you find something which, you know, looks good. But I personally think this has potential. It might look good. But yeah, so I think that looks pretty decent, doesn't it? Let me actually go ahead and reduce the scale because obviously the scale is way too large, and something like 3 and 6. That's too small because I want the scale to be similar to these bricks. So how about we make it 1.5 and 3? And I think they're being stretched a little too much, so maybe make it 1.5, 1.5. Yeah, I think that's better. Yep, I think I'm gonna go with that. I think that looks pretty decent, and you might actually want to modify this material as well. Maybe make it a little larger. So just open this material, set it to maybe 1 by 2, or maybe 1.2 by 2.5, or maybe even 2.3. 2.3. Yeah, I think that's fine. And so yeah, I think I'm pretty satisfied with my garage, the outside part of my garage at least, and I think it looks pretty decent. Now we can probably move on to building out the inside part of the garage, so we can just get started with that now. All right, so first thing that you're gonna notice is that this wall of the garage is not looking particularly good. So what I can just do is I can just probably duplicate this down like that and just like cover the whole area, make sure it's not visible from the outside, which is it's not perfect. And I can do the same with the other side as well. Cool. And so right now we don't have any lights in here, that's why it's looking super weird. So let's go ahead and add some lights. So what I'm going to do is that I'm actually going to go to add shapes, and then let's add a cube. So I want there to be like light bars on the top. But at the same time, I don't want you to sort of be bound by whatever I'm doing right now. What you can do is you can just go to the internet and you can just go to Pinterest and you can search for maybe something like car in studio. Look for something like that. And then you're going to see a lot of these interesting light setups, or maybe car in garage. That would be better. So you're going to see a lot of interesting light setups. You can do something like this. You could like make hanging light bars. You could also do like light strips. This is I think similar to what I'm trying to do, but my strips are going to be like a little thicker. But yeah, you get the idea, right? And you could do like these light panels if you want. So I mean, you have a lot of these options, is what I'm trying to say. Yeah, you just don't need to sort of feel confined to whatever I'm doing. Yeah. And So now let me reduce the size of this. Let me reduce the size of this like this. Perfect. And so I think that should be, yeah, that should be good enough for one light strip. Maybe even a little thinner. I'm gonna do them a little thinner than last time. Something like that should be good. And then what I can do is I can actually just go back to automotive materials. And inside here we have, if you remember, we had a light material. This light lamp white material right here. So I can just apply that. And you're gonna see that everything is gonna look super weird right now. And that's perfectly fine. And I'm gonna fix that in just 1 second, but let me just place this properly first. So I'm just gonna scale it up like that. And yeah, just for the time being, what I'm gonna do is I'm actually gonna go to add. I'm gonna go to lights, and then I'm just gonna add a point light just to sort of light up the whole environment. Go down like that, and you can see that that's sort of like lighting it up, and just at least we can, like, you know, see around, see what's going on. So place this somewhere here, go up like that, and now we can just duplicate this. So press and hold Alt and keep duplicating it like that, and one more, something like that. And we can have, should we have one more here? We can try it out. And then let me select all of them and make sure they're centered in the whole room. Yeah, I think it looks pretty decent. So now what we can do is we can get rid of this point light, and instead of that, what we can do is we can go ahead and add again lights. This time we're doing rect lights, and so these rect lights we're going to place in front of our actual lights, so we can sort of, you know, make sure that the lights are actually lighting up. And I'm going to go to the details panel and reduce the barn door length to 0, because that's not something I want. And then I can so scaling doesn't work because that's going to change the attenuation radius. You have to use the source width and source height. So I'm going to increase the width, reduce the height, move it up. Just do any of these right now, and then we can duplicate them later on. And yeah, so the size and the shape of the lights should be roughly similar to the actual light itself. Reduce the height a little more, increase the radius, increase the width a little more, and should be good for the most part. Yeah, pretty good. And then we can just duplicate this for all of our light bars. And also the light material is not really visible right now. I don't even know if it's applied. Yeah, it is, but it's not visible. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to double click this and open it. And I'm going to increase the intensity to something like 100. But right now the problem is that if I go to the car, you're going to see that this car also has the same material. So if I increase the intensity of this, it's going to increase the intensity of both the materials, right? And that's not something I want. So what I'm going to do is that I'm actually going to right click this material and create a material instance, which is essentially another version of the material. So this one I can apply to this lamp, right? The car. And so after that, if I increase the intensity of the other one to 100, it's still going to increase it. But then what you can do is you can also go back to your material instance, which you just applied to this, and then change the facing intensity to back to 5. So now this has 5, and then if I go back, this should have 100. Perfect. So that's exactly what we want. Now you can see that it looks pretty decent. However, I'm not really feeling the walls. So we're going to have to work on the walls, and also the floor is not looking good either. So we're going to have to work on that as well. So let's go ahead and first just duplicate the floor. Just create the floor by duplicating the roof. So just press and hold Alt, bring it down like that, take it low. So just make sure that it's just a tad bit above the floor, so something like that should be good. And let me open this gate right now just so we can see the difference better. So you can see that there is still a bit of a difference, so I'm gonna bring it a little lower. I think that's fine. Yeah, shouldn't really be that big of a problem. But yeah, so you can see that the inside is way too bright right now. So we're gonna have to reduce the intensity of our lights. So the way we do that is by selecting all of them. And I'm holding shift while I'm selecting all of them. And so instead of 8, we can probably do 4. So that's just gonna reduce the intensity. Did it even do anything though? Yeah, it did. 4. Let's see. Let's go ahead and bring the car back in so we can really see how the car looks. Select the car. Bring it back in. Something like that. And so the lights need to be much brighter in my opinion. 5 is not cutting it, but yeah, you can see that it looks pretty decent. We might need to get rid of the ones at the edges because it looks very diffused. The light looks pretty diffused. That's not something I want. I want the light to be more sharp, you know. And let's see how it looks in path tracing. So if I go back to path tracing and let the materials load, you're gonna see that it looks pretty decent. However, I'm not really feeling the ground or the walls or anything like that yet. So let's go ahead and go to add quick content and just find materials to add to these. So I wanna go to surfaces and let's do something. I wanna ideally do something concrete or metal, honestly. Honestly, metal might be good. Let me go to metal. Let's see if we can find something interesting. So, how about something like this? Metal sheet. And we can probably change the color of this. Or even this metal panels. Actually, let me try this. Because it's already downloaded anyway. Let me apply it to the walls. So, the walls. And let's reduce the scale. So, let's do 3 by 3. Maybe 5 by 5. I think that looks pretty decent. However, I want to increase the normal intensity. Something like 3. And also the max roughness, we can try reducing this to make it look more glossy. Maybe 0.8. I think that might be better. Yep, I think I'm honestly feeling that. I think it looks pretty good. Let's see how it looks in path tracing. Yeah, I think I'm gonna go with that. I think it looks pretty decent. Let's look for something for the floor, the ground. We can do. Let's try adding this. Oh, it's asking me to sign in. Oh, I already did. Okay, so I'm just gonna download this and just add it, and we can apply it to the floor. And so this color I'm really gonna have to change because it's too bright for now, and it's I think the scale is pretty decent. We might have to reduce it a little bit, like maybe make it 2 by 2, just so we can see those imperfections better, you know. And maybe increase the increase the normal map. I don't know why I keep calling this roughness. I get both of them confused. But yeah, so now instead of the albedo tint being that bright, I can make it a little darker just so we can, you know, see better. I think that looks pretty good. Let's go back to path tracing. I think it's too bright. So what I can do is I can select all these cubes. Actually, let me go back to my light material and reduce the intensity of that material, because in path tracing what happens is that these materials are also emissive, so they also do contribute to your scene. So you can see that now it's much better, right? And I also want to change the color of the car. I want to make it a little darker. I want to do something like this green color. I don't know if it's green or not, but it's a very dark color. I really don't know what it's called. But yeah, I think this color looks pretty good. yeah, I'm feeling this. So I think it's still a little too bright. So I just want to select the lamps and reduce the intensity even more to something like 2. That's still too bright. Let's decrease down to 1. And let's decrease the lights as well one more time. Instead of 20, make it 10. Okay, so that really isn't doing anything at this point. So let's see what's really making it that bright. If I just go ahead and delete all these lights, or like just hide them, let's see what happens then. Yeah, so it does become pretty dark, but at the same time, they're only 1. The intensity is only 1, so let's try to set it to 0.5. So what I'm gonna do is I actually wanna delete 2 of these cubes, and I just wanna have like 2 light bars, because I think more than that it just becomes too bright. I think 2 should be enough. Let's see how it looks in lit mode. Alright, so one problem that I'm noticing right now is that there's actually fog inside of this garage. So we obviously don't want fog to be inside our garage, right? So I'm just gonna go to exponential height fog, and what we can do is we can, if I just disable this for now, you can see the difference before and after. But obviously we do want fog in like outside our scene, right? So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna turn it on, and so the fog start distance, I'm gonna increase that to like 5,000. So just increase that to something which is, you know, beyond your what do you call it, your garage's size, right? So cool. After that, what we can do is we can go back to path tracing, and let's see what we can do to make this look better. So right now, the main reason why it looks super bright is because we don't have a post-process volume right now, and our exposure is set to auto. So we can just go ahead and add one right now. So I'm just going to go to add and visual effects, post-process volume. Just bring it down, take it down just so it doesn't interfere with our scene. Something like that. And we can go to the post-process volume, search for infinite extent. This is going to make sure that it affects the whole scene, the whole level. And then we can go to exposure, turn these 2 settings on, set the metering mode to manual, and the exposure compensation to something like 10. So what I want to do is I'm going to actually set the exposure correct to the outside scene, so the brightness that I want in the outside scene. So I think something like that should be good. And then I can go inside and sort of increase all the lights and everything. Now I think we can actually bring back one more light. We can have 3 lights, and just select all these 3 lights and increase the, what do you call it, brightness back to something like 20. So that was the problem that we were facing. That's why I usually like to add a post-process volume before we start to work on the lighting, but I don't know why I forgot today. But yeah, so now you can see that it looks pretty decent, right? One thing which I'm noticing right now is that it looks kind of flat. There's no contrast in this. So again, for that, we can go back to the post-process volume. We can go down to global and then contrast. Just make sure to set this to something like 1.2. And now you're going to see that it has a lot more contrast. Perfect. One thing which I can do is I can probably just move these to the like closer to the edges so that we can light up more of the sides of the car, because before the tires and the side parts were like super dark, so we don't really want that. And okay, so this is our garage, and if I open the garage, something like that, you can see that we're gonna have an we can have the car come out of the garage like that, and it's still going to look pretty decent, right? All right, so next up what we can do is we can basically go ahead and populate the inside part of the garage. But before that, what I'm going to do is I actually want to increase the size of the garage because I think it's a little too small right now. So what we can do is we can just select these walls and just move them back like that. So I think something like this should be fine, because I want some what do you call it, some space for the camera to sort of have, you know, a longer focal length, because right now if I place the camera here, you can see that it looks like it's pretty close to the camera, right? But if, for example, I want to do like a more like a close render, something like this, I'm pressing C on my keyboard, by the way, to increase my focal length. I want to do something like that of a shot. Then I'll have to move back, and I won't have any space to move back, you know, if that makes sense. So what we can do is we can just move it back or something like that. And then we can just duplicate these like this, duplicate the roof. And since we already have all the materials and everything, it shouldn't be a problem. We can just go ahead and do this. Perfect. So, and for the floor as well, obviously. Where to go? Yeah. So just move it back. Something like that. Perfect. So now you can see that our garage is just way bigger, which is better. You can increase the, or what I'm gonna do is I'm actually gonna place these in the center of the room, because right now they're obviously at the front and that looks weird. So I'm just gonna bring it back, something like that, just roughly the center of the room, something like that should be fine. Perfect. So next, I can just go back to lit mode for now, just so we can, see things better. We can switch to path tracing later on, and then we can select the car as well and move it back. Something like that. And now we can sort of start to populate our garage. So what I'm going to do for that is I'm going to go to add coastal content, and you can get some stuff from Megascans to just make this better. And we can go to collections and environments, and then if I go down to urban, you're gonna see that we have we can probably use urban trash, this collection. We can actually I don't think so, because I want this to be like a modern garage, but I want to have some racks. So let me just search for a rack. Let's see if we can find something. Yeah, something like that. I like this one, honestly. Yeah, I want to add one of these. And let me add this as well. But actually, let me add this. It's not going to be used for books, but still. We can add this as well, probably. Yeah, because you want a lot of variety and a lot of variation in our assets. That way it's going to look more, more realistic. And so we can select all of these assets and just drag them in. Let's see what they look like. Just give it a second. And so you can see that it looks pretty decent. So I'm just going to place it here. And obviously the size is insanely huge right now. So we're going to have to scale it down. Something like that. Let's rotate it 90 degrees. And let's place it on this side like that. And I want to have I want to have multiple of these. That's too small, I think. How about I increase it in size like this and then reduce the size a little bit in this axis. I think that should be fine. And then I'm gonna duplicate this as well, something like that. Yeah, I think that looks more realistic. And I think instead of the middle ground, I want to do like a concrete floor. I think that's going to look more realistic. But again, it really depends. For you, it really depends on what sort of look you're going for. If you want to give it that modern type look, then obviously it's going to be different for you. So I can rotate this like that. Move it up. Place it right here on the wall. Something like that. And so our purpose here is basically just to add a lot of stuff. Let's see if we have something in 3D assets. Let's go here and then let's see if we can find something interesting. So let's do props. We can actually go to military and then get some crates or something like that. Maybe something like this. Let's get this. And let's get some jerry cans as well. Again, all this is going to depend on what sort of vibe you're going for. If you want to go for like a more sci-fi vibe, or or like a more studio type vibe, then obviously the assets that you're going to use are going to be different. I want to go for more of a realistic actual garage type vibe, you know. That's why I'm adding these assets. And perfect. So let's add something else. And now it's just it's literally like if you've played that game which is called Sims, um it's literally just like that. It's just dragging items on your scene and then just, you know, placing them in a way that looks good, you know. So, and also make sure to add like some sort of variation, um because otherwise it's going to look kind of fake. Something like that should be fine. Actually, no, that looks very weird. Move it a little there. Cool. Yeah, make sure to add some sort of variation to your objects. Make sure not everything is just sitting there perfectly, because that's gonna look weird. And I would add some books, but then it doesn't make sense to add just random books in your garage. So we can add some stuff from here. Probably add this plastic container. Can maybe add one of these plastic crates. Problem with all these assets is that most of them are super dirty and like they have a more, you know, used rugged vibe, which doesn't really go with our car here, because our car is obviously, you know, supposed to be like a luxury sports car. But I mean, then again, they're all going to be in the side and they're not going to be that visible, which should be fine. And what I mean to say is the details, the dirty details, won't be that visible. Hopefully, let's add this here. Scale it down. Just place it right here. Yeah, it looks very clean and very new, you know? I want to have like a trash bag somewhere. But the main point of this tutorial obviously is to just show you guys how to add these assets and what sort of assets you have available in Megascans. Obviously, exactly what to add, that's going to be up to you. So yeah. And like the sort of vibe that you want to go for, again, that is going to be totally up to you. And I can't really, you know, tell you what to do and what not to do. So I think that should be fine. And yeah, I think it looks much better than before. I want to work on the floor though, like the ground. I want to have more of a concrete material. Maybe something like this, concrete pavement. That might be good. Because right now the metal is looking too much like a, you know, like much like a, I don't know how to describe it, but it looks more unrealistic than a concrete. Yeah, and I think that looks much better. However, we are going to make some changes to this. So I'm going to increase the normal strength to 2, just right off the bat, because I want it to be more bumpy. And we're also going to reduce the tiling. So basically increase the tiling to reduce the size of the material, if that makes sense. I'm going to do that. And also we can try reducing the max roughness just to see how it looks. Nope, looks super bad. And I can also reduce the albedo tint to something like that, just to make it a little darker, you know. And that should be good. Let me try to increase the minimum roughness, see what that does. I'll do something like 0.8. I think that's too rough. Yeah, I think this is better. So, okay, I think it looks pretty good. And also the wall. I don't really know if I'm feeling the wall, honestly. It looks too weird, to be honest. I could maybe look for something else, honestly. So maybe some concrete slabs or a concrete wall or something like that. Something like this. I could try this maybe. Or maybe this painted concrete. We can try adding this. Honestly, I'm going to go with this, but then I'm going to make some tweaks as well. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to apply this first. Let me apply it to the top part as well, the ceiling. I can't believe it's the same material. It's because the light is affecting on this area, but not on the, the top part. So I can, what I can do is I can reduce the albedo tint because right now it's too bright. So reduce to something like that. And also what I want to do is I want to reduce the size. So just reduce to something like 3. But then the problem is the wall looks too similar to the ground. And yeah, that's a problem. So I want it to be more, I want the color to be a little different. How about we make it even darker? I think I'm gonna go with something like that, like something a little darker. I think that looks pretty decent. So yeah, now we can make renders. Let me just switch back to path tracing just for a bit, and let me change the color of the car, honestly, because the problem with this car is that it's too dull. I don't know, I think it looks too dull to me. Let's try white. You know what, I'm actually gonna go with white because I think white looks pretty good. And just apply it everywhere. That's how easy it is to change the color of your car. I am going to open the material and then just reduce the value of the color just a bit so we can, see more of those reflections. Just a tad bit like that. And let's see how it looks. I'm pressing C on my keyboard, by the way, to do that. And I want some stuff on the back as well, to be honest. How about I just duplicate 2 of these? Actually, no, I'm going to have to select all of them, all of the assets. And then duplicate them, send them to the back, rotate them like that, and just place them right there on one side. I think that looks pretty good. Looks like a proper garage. Yeah, I think it looks pretty decent. You can also add some stuff on these racks, so we can probably just duplicate these. Let's put them on the racks. But again, that's up to you. You really, it all comes down to you and what you want to do. Stuff, but okay. I think that should be enough. Maybe just like 2 of these like that. Perfect. So I think we're pretty much done with the garage, the inside part of the garage, I think I'm pretty satisfied with this, with what we've created. And so now we can probably come out and sort of work on the outside. The outside shouldn't take that much work because it's really the background that we care about, and that's pretty much done. However, we do need to add like some trees and stuff just to make the lighting more interesting. But the inside part was the main thing that we had to work on, and we're pretty much done with that. Now, do note that if I was actually making a real project, what I would do is I would obviously spend more time on this and sort of add way more assets in this, because I think right now it looks very simple and very perfect. I would add more imperfections. I would maybe add some decals to this. Actually, let me show you how to add decals. So what you can do is you can go to bridge, go home, and decals, and then you can just look at these different options that you have. So maybe something like, let me look for a concrete, like a concrete damage, like a damaged concrete decal, something like this, or maybe something like that, like a crack. Let me download this, and I think medium quality should be fine. And then what we can do is we can just drag this on like that. And right now it's facing downwards, so that's not what we want. We're going to rotate it so that it faces towards the wall. And then we can reduce the size in only the axes that are parallel to the wall. Scale it up, something like that, and rotate it. Now if I press G to get rid of that widget, you can see that it looks pretty decent. Obviously it doesn't look super realistic, that's why I don't really like decals as much. That's why I don't really add them as much, but some of them, especially the leakage ones, they can look pretty good. So let me add some leakage decals. So if I go to leakage and then I go to maybe something like this might be good. Let me download highest quality. And these ones usually have the potential of looking really good. I'm going to add them and just drop them like that, and make sure that they're facing towards the wall, and also rotate them so that they're sort of facing downwards, you know. And now I can scale it down, these axes, something like that. And if I just push them against the edge, something like this, you can see that if you look at just this part, the wall looks so much better, right? Because it looks more realistic, it has more detail. So that's what I usually like to do. And also so what you can do is you can basically just make sure it's not intersecting with this wall. And so to make sure of that, you can select the decal and just move it so that it's right next to the wall but not intersecting with it. And then you can also duplicate this, obviously, because right now it's not covering the whole wall. Something like that. And yeah, that's how you add decals. And as you can see, if you compare maybe this wall, let me go to lit mode just so you can see better. If you compare this wall to this wall, you can see that there's just minor details which just make it look a lot more realistic, right? And actually some of it is intersecting with the top, so I'm just gonna scale it down like that. Perfect. So yeah, that's pretty much it for the inside parts of the garage. Let's move outside and let's start working on the outside. All right, so I'm just gonna bring the car out and just select it, all descendants, and just bring it out. Perfect. So now what I'm gonna do is let me actually start with adding a camera first, so we can like know where our sort of view is gonna be, so where we can like, you know, add stuff. So I'm just gonna go to add a cinematic, and then let's add a cine camera actor. Right click this, pilot, and now we can go out and just place it somewhere right here. Actually, let's place it right here, and so then we can just move our car to sort of be in the middle. Something like that. We can even rotate it a little bit. I think something like that should be good. Perfect. So now we can set the focus correct, because the focus is very off right now. And so I'm just going to go inside the cine camera actor, go down to the focus method, and you have a few options right now. So one of the options that you have right now is essentially to select any object, for example, this logo, and just set that as the focus object. So I'm actually going to do that, or you can just set your manual focus distance just manually. However, I'm just going to do tracking, and then let's go down to tracking focus settings, and then we can select what do you call it, this object right here. So we can just click this eyedropper tool right here, this picker tool right here, and we can select the logo. Perfect. So one problem which I'm noticing right now is the fact that the back part of the car is blur and the front part of the car is in focus. So that means that our focal length, not our focal length, sorry, our focus aperture is too low, right? So right now you can see it's 2.8. So if I set it to something like 3.5, you're gonna see more of the car is gonna be in focus, and it's gonna get darker as well. If you know how, what do you call it, how cameras work, you would know why that happens, because the lower your f-stop value is, by the way, just your aperture. The lower your aperture is, the wider your camera opens, and so it lets in more light, and however at the same time it sort of makes the depth of field more shallow as well. So I'm just gonna set it to something like 5 for now. I think actually let me set it to 3.5 for now, just for now, and then we can also increase the focal length to something like that, and just place the camera like right here. I think that should be fine, and then we can maybe try increasing it to something like 4. I think 4 should be good. And obviously I'm going to go back to my post-process volume and increase the exposure as well, because it's getting too dark. So set it to something like 11. 11 is too much. 10.5, I think that should be fine. And now we already have trees imported from the previous project, so I'm just going to go ahead and add some trees as well. So we can just go to the folder where we had trees, Norway maple, and so we can just select geometry. This is because we just want to place like a couple of trees, like maybe one or two. That's why we won't use foliage. And so I'm just going to place it right here, and we can use our second viewport to position this tree. Now, if you don't have the second viewport, what you can do is you can just go to Window up there, click Viewports, select Viewport 2, and it's not gonna come here automatically. But I mean, if it's something like this, if it's like a separate window, what you can do is you can just click right here and drag this on your outliner, and it's gonna come right next to that. Perfect. So now we can position this in such a way that the shadow of the leaves is over our car. Again, all this is just creativity now, and actually that's too much. I'm gonna place it right here, and then we can change rotation of our directional light. I'm just gonna bring it near the camera. I'm just gonna bring it near the car so we can just change it from this viewport, and we don't have to, like, have a second viewport, because as you can see, if you have a second viewport, it's gonna start to flicker and stuff. And we can also switch to path tracing just to get better results. And so now you can see that that completely changed the whole vibe of the scene. And so I think I'm probably gonna go with something like that. And let's go to lip mode to see how it looks. And yeah, I think that looks very, very good. And you can also go with something like this, which is like more sun. But then I think I personally like this more, because there's also like a blue vibe in the background as well. So I think I'm gonna go with this, and I think it looks pretty good. So that's pretty much it for the lighting, for the outside at least, and I think we are looking pretty decent. Now I think we should make some minor adjustments. So I'm just gonna go to my post-process volume, and in here I can go down all the way down to path tracing. You're gonna see this thing called path tracing. And so make sure the reference depth of field is turned on, because if it's off, you can see that our reflections are going to look very blurry and very bad. But if it's turned on, you're going to see that our reflections are going to be super accurate. And so then we can, after that, we can go up and just make some minor adjustments, like change the bloom method to convolution and increase the bloom a little bit, just like that. And we can go down to global. Contrast is already 1.2. That should be enough. We don't need to add like further contrast. And the temperature, I might want to play with the temperature a little bit. So I might want to increase the temperature if you want to make it more yellowy, or reduce it if you want to make it more blue. I think I'm going to go with a little yellow, something like that. So this is the before, this is the after. I think the after looks a little better. So yeah, and let me increase the saturation a little bit as well, because I think it's too desaturated. And yeah, so I think we are looking pretty decent. Our render looks really good, and I think we're pretty much done with this this outside render. So what we can do is we can just go ahead and press G to go into game mode, and then increase the size, let it render. And once it's done, you can click these three lines right here, click high resolution screenshot, and then just click capture, right? So that's the same process that we used for our previous render as well. And so next up after this, what we're going to be doing is that we're just going to go inside the garage, and let's take a high resolution screenshot inside it as well. Now you can obviously make an animation as well. I'm not going to do that though, because I've made plenty of animation courses in the past, and I think that knowledge is sort of getting repetitive. So I don't want to, like, be teaching the same thing over and over again. So you guys can watch that course if you want though. Now obviously you can see that our focal length is super long, and so we're gonna select the current focal length, just reduce this to something like 30 is still too much, maybe 20, and then you can just find like good places to render this car, but I'm just gonna select it, take it back. That's why we wanted we wanted more space, because so we can like have more space for the car, and so we can get a better focal length. Let me actually increase the focal length back to something like 45. And so I think if you take a picture like this, that would look pretty good. One thing that I'm noticing right now is the bloom that we increased is too much here, so we can just uncheck it. And actually, let's set it to convolution and then reduce the intensity to like a fairly low amount. Or maybe just set the intensity back to 0. Sorry, back to the default. And also I think it is still pretty overexposed, so I'm just going to set it back to 10. I think something like that should be better. And then we can just find good angles to render this, and yeah, that's essentially it. So you can just find good angles to render it, and then you can render it on your own terms. Now I'm not going to do that because I don't really need to. I just showed you the process in the first one. And so yeah, the process is essentially the same. And yeah, you can take some close-up shots, some very tight shots. Maybe a shot like this would be nice. And obviously make sure to change your focal point then. So what I would recommend you to do is I would just recommend you to change it back to manual and just set it according to your own choice. So I think that looks really realistic and it's pretty good. Okay. So yeah, that's essentially it for this. I really hope you guys learned something new. I really hope you guys enjoyed as well. And that's essentially it for this one. I'll see you guys in the next one. Goodbye.